two, one, go. Good afternoon. Before we begin, I would like to remind all of the participants of Zoom that we have the service of interpreting available in English and Spanish. You just need to choose the language you prefer to listen to the conference in at the bottom of your screen, and also through the YouTube channel of our Americas. We're also broadcasting in both English and Spanish. I would like that please keep your cameras and microphones off when the other participants are speaking. This meeting is being broadcasted in real time live on the YouTube channel of FAO Americas, from which you can send your comments and questions. So I am Laura Hernandez, and I would like to kindly welcome you all to everyone who's here today on this dialogue, spokesmanships, and leadership of the youth in the agenda of food and agriculture. This event is part of the instance for consultation for the civil society in the framework of the 38th period of the National Conference of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean. This is an official forum where the ministries of agriculture and high workers of the state members of the region gather and discuss on the challenges and priority matters related to food and agriculture, with the purpose of promoting the regional coherence in the political matters of a global affair. So the objective of this topic dialogue is, or theme dialogue, is to reflect together with the youth and all the diversities on this matter of priorities within FAO. And of course, this has to do with the process of the national conference and especially what the youth, all the input that the youth can have. Hopefully, this will work for the statement as a civil society. So I would like to also comment the way we're going to be doing this in the session that we start today is gathering the same way. First, we do an activity to an icebreaker activity with the participants. Then we have a presentation by FAO by Valentina Morales, who, sorry, that will allow us to have some input on this dialogue. And then we will continue with a number of group work through generating questions of 1 hour of duration. And this will finalize with a presentation of what has been worked in every group. So after that, we'll leave the word to Valentina so she can share some reflections based on what was presented and what we have worked in the groups. We'll also give the floor to one of our delegate uh, from the youth, so she can also provide us some ideas regarding the participation of the youth in food and agriculture. Um, Finally, we'll share some conclusions and closing remarks for the day. So let's continue now. We'd like to ask the participants to please share your opinions. You're going to be finding on the chat a link so you can enter and answer the following questions. So, in which activities of food and agriculture does the youth participate in? So, please open up the link, leave your opinions, and we can read them and show them on the screen.
Si no, también pueden entrar a la aplicación de Mentimeter y pueden
Otherwise, you can go to Mentimeter app and enter the code that's also in the chat 65987360, and we're waiting for your answers to share them. So let us know if you are in the sector of farmers or any production project. So we'd like to show the diversity in which the youth participates in. If you have any difficulties
a la aplicación
go to the app
o con el código,
or with the
pueden
code,
hacérnoslo saber en el chat también.
please let us know in the chat.
O pueden escribirnos aquí en el chat
Or you
preguntas
can write on
en
the
qué
chat as
actividades
well regarding what activities
de alimentación y agricultura participan.
regarding food and agriculture are you participating in.
Estamos esperando sus respuestas.
We're waiting for your responses.
No, también pueden, el chat está abierto, pueden
Otherwise,
comentar.
the chat is open and you can comment.
Muy bien. ¿En qué actividades de alimentación y agricultura participan las juventudes? Tenemos 21 respuestas. Hay
We have
quienes
21 responses.
experiencia, quienes
Some talk about
están en el
incidents,
tema de seguridad alimentaria,
food
proyectos de alimentación.
security,
Hay quien se
production of
dedica a producir y
food.
asesorar
Some
en
people
la
work with
agricultura,
productivity
toman
in
decisiones,
agriculture, decision
generan composta,
makers,
están en el tema de
composting,
alimentación digna, digitalización,
decent
siembran.
food,
Hay
sewing.
quien está en el sector de la academia,
Some are in the
en la
academia,
planificación también, quienes
in
abordan
planning
el
as
tema de
well.
agroecología,
We also have
huertos
some people working
comunitarios, agricultura
agroecology,
y
community
urbana,
orchards,
programas
urban
educativos,
agriculture, educational
comercialización,
programs, trading,
nuevamente sembrar, es como
again, sewing,
la que la palabra que
which is
ahorita
maybe
salió, y lo de
the word
producción
that is
con la que
getting
más
more
se
popular
repite,
now. And
educación
these are the ones we
transformadora,
repeat the
también se
most.
repitió,
Transformative
como en el
education
taller
again.
la
This was
formación,
also repeated here
asesorando,
in the training,
investigación.
advising,
Entonces se repite con la
and also
academia.
research.
Entonces, pues esa es una
With the
muestra de lo que
academia, this
hace
is the sample
las juventudes que están
of what the
participando en
youth
este
is
diálogo
doing, the ones that are
temático.
participating in this
Les agradecemos
dialogue.
su
I'd like
participación,
to
hemos visto
thank
sus
you for your
opiniones y aportes en
participation. We
esta
have seen your
dinámica.
opinions and
Y bueno, es
contributions to
muy
this
importante
dynamic.
resaltar esta parte que las juventudes están activamente dentro de la
So the youth is
alimentación y la
actively
agricultura, que ya
included
lo
in food
vimos,
and agriculture.
están haciendo varias cosas en la academia, en la investigación, produciendo,
For all the people
dando
that are doing a lot of
educación
things in the academic
y
education,
también la
producing,
cuestión del sembrar y
and
producir.
also
Bueno,
the sewing and producing
gracias
food.
por su participación.
Thank you so
Eh,
much for your participation.
Vamos
We
a
will
continuar
continue with
con el diálogo. La idea de hacer
with the
este ejercicio
dialogue
primero
now.
pues sirvió
The
para
idea of
tener
this exercise was
pues un
to
panorama
have
general. Bueno,
a general
esto se
idea.
entreteje con lo que nos va a compartir
This is
Valentina
interwoven
Morales.
with what
Valentina
Valentina
Morales
Morales will
es
share with us. Valentina
regional
Morales
representante
is
de la FAO para América Latina y el
representative
Caribe,
of the
que tiene una
youth
presencia
for the
muy
Latin
fuerte,
America and the Caribbean,
pues precisamente a
and she
visibilizar esta
has
cuestión de
to
las juventudes
make
que
visible
están
this
participando
issue of
activamente
youth
en alimentación y agricultura
participating
y la
in
diversidad de
food and
sectores también
agriculture and also the
que hay, ¿no?
diversities,
Y
as we
bueno,
call
pues la
them.
idea pues a Valentina pues
So their
esto
idea
le va a servir
is
precisamente a
that
ustedes de
this is
conversación
gonna
para que ella pueda
work.
también igual fortalecer su
This is gonna work
presentación
so you
y
can
también
strengthen this.
pongamos atención a lo que nos comparte Valentina porque sobre esto
So Valentina is gonna be
haremos
sharing
pues un
this, and on
trabajo de grupo,
this
¿no?
we'll
Ella
do the group
dirá
work.
los insumos que
So,
coloque aquí, los puntos que coloque Valentina
so the
para
points
que
that
este
Valentina will
trabajo
put
se
here are
realice.
gonna be useful
Entonces,
as well.
cedo la palabra a Valentina y bueno, agradecemos que puedas estar aquí y aportar. Muchas
So we
gracias,
thank
Laura.
her for being here.
Un
Thank you
segundo
very much,
que voy
Laura.
a comenzar a
Give me
compartir
one
pantalla
second. I'm gonna be sharing my screen.
y me pueden decir si es que ya la ven en formato presentación.
Can you see me if you can see the presentation?
Sí, sí se ve. Sí, ya, perfecto.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos, a todas. Primero que todo quiero saludar a todas las organizaciones que nos
First of all, I would
acompañan el
like
día de hoy en
to
este
greet
conversatorio.
all the organizations
Agradecer a
who are
Mari, a
joining us
Laura
in this
y a la
organization.
Alianza por
Thanks to Marlene,
organizar
Laura, and the
por organizar
Alliance
este diálogo
of
y por
Latin
este
America and the Caribbean for
espacio
organizing
para
this
el día de hoy.
dialogue and
Como ya
allowing for this
presentó
space
Laura, mi
today.
nombre es Valentina,
As Laura
soy
said so
comisionada
already, I'm
regional
Valentina.
para América
I
Latina
work
y
in the
el
regional
Caribe
office
para participar
in the FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean as a focal point
en este
for the
diálogo.
rural
Voy a
youth.
hacer
I am accompanying
breve
this dialogue now.
para
And in
contar
this
el día
first
de hoy
part, I
cómo
have a
estamos
presentation to tell you
organizados,
more
cómo estamos
about the work of
organizados
FAO, how we are
y
talking
espero
about
que sirva
youth.
como una introducción para estas
I hope
conversaciones
this is a good
que
introduction
vamos
for
a
these
continuar
conversations
después.
and the groups
Así que,
that we're going to be doing
bueno,
later.
como Laura ya hizo la
So,
introducción de manera
as
imperfecta,
Laura
voy a
already said
comentar que
so, I'm
desde
not going to dwell on that a lot, but the FAO
cada 2 años
conference
se está
for Latin America and the
implementando en
Caribbean
Guyana
is taking place
y
every
es
2 years. It's
algo
going to be in March in
importante
Guyana
porque es
this
una
year, and the
reunión
main
regional sin fines de
body
lucro,
of
normalmente
government
en
in the
que
regional
los altos funcionarios se
government
reúnen para
is
debatir sobre
a
estrategias
consultation
y temas
forum where the
relacionados
ministers
a la
gather
implementación de
to
políticas.
these
En este
projects
espacio,
of
los
food
Estados
agriculture. So
miembros
in this
es
space, the member
fundamental
states
acompañar a
is
los
very
actores de la
fundamental
sociedad civil
to
y sus
hear the
perspectivas,
voices of the civil
conocer sus
society,
contribuciones a
know their
desarrollo de las FAO
perspectives, and
y
promote
estamos
their
siempre muy
contributions to the
agradecidos
FAO
de
area.
este
And we're
diálogo de los
very
jóvenes porque es una
happy
primera
to have this
experiencia en
youth
espacio
dialogue
exclusivo
because it's
para
the
poder
first time
dialogar entre las
we have an
comunidades,
exclusive
recoger
space
sus
to have a
opiniones,
dialogue among the youth, gather
recomendaciones
their opinions,
para
voices, and
mejorar. Yo
recommendations
esperamos que
for the
sea uno de los
region.
tantos pasos
And we hope this is
para
one of the many
increasar la
steps that we're going to be
participación
taking
de la
to
juventud
strengthen the
en este espacio de
participation of youth
diálogo
in this
político en la
dialogue,
ciudad.
political dialogue spaces.
Además de entender de qué se trata
Also,
esta
apart from
conferencia,
understanding what this
conferencia LAC,
conference is about,
también es muy
the
importante
LARC
entender
conference,
el
it is
contexto
also very
regional
important
en
to
que estamos
understand the regional context
discutiendo estas
in which
prioridades
we
y
are
cómo estos
discussing
están
these
afectando a los
priorities
sistemas
and how
agropecuarios.
is this
Existen
affecting our
5
agrifood
cuestiones
systems.
importantes que reconoce
There's
la
five
FAO.
important
El
matters
primero es
that
el bajo
the FAO
crecimiento
acknowledges.
económico. La
First is
región
the
ya
low
lleva
economic
10
growth. The
años
region
de
already
bajo crecimiento
has
económico,
10 years of low economic
situación
growth,
que
a
viene siendo
situation that,
agravó
as we
por
all
la
know,
pandemia del
was
coronavirus
aggravated
estos 2
because
años,
of coronavirus and the Ukraine
agravó la
conflict,
situación inflacionaria,
provoking
creación de empleo,
inflation,
menor inversión
fewer
y
jobs, lower
además se
investments,
incrementaron todas las demandas
and
sociales.
also we increase
Además
social
de esto,
demands as well. So
existe
apart from that, we have
persisten la pobreza y la desigualdad en el medio rural.
there's a
La pobreza
persistence
rural
of
ha
poverty and
permanecido
equality in the
estancada
rural areas.
alrededor de un 40% desde
Rural poverty
2014.
is stagnated at
Esto
about
además
40% since
afecta
2014, which also
desproporcionadamente a
affects
grupos más
in a
vulnerables como
disproportionate
las mujeres,
manner the
jóvenes,
most
personas
vulnerable groups,
indígenas y pueblos
such as
originarios.
women, youth,
El
Afro-descendants, and
tercer
indigenous groups. And the
tema
third
importante a resaltar son
important
los
matter
elevados niveles de hambre,
here
inseguridad
is the
alimentaria y
high
pobreza.
levels of hunger, food
Nuestra
insecurity,
región
and
en el
malnutrition.
último año
Our region,
disminuyó
while in
ligeramente los
the
niveles de
last
hambre
year
diario en
slightly
promedio,
decreased the
aún
levels
tenemos
of
un
hunger and food
6,5%
insecurity,
de la
we still
población en
have
riesgo de hambre en América Latina
6.5%
y
of the
Caribe
population
y un
starving in Latin America and the
37% en
Caribbean, and
pobreza extrema.
37%
Esto se
suffering
suma
from
además a otros
food
factores como
insecurity,
condiciones
added to other factors
socioeconómicas,
such as,
nuestra
for
región
instance,
costa más de
that
la
our region
mitad
is the one
de
that
la
has the
desigualdad
highest cost of
en
living for a
comparación
healthy
con los
diet
promedios mundiales.
compared to the world averages.
Cuarto y quinto, el cuarto de los
Fourth
efectos
and
del
fifth,
cambio climático.
fourth is the
La
effect of
región
climate change.
especialmente vulnerable al
The
cambio
region is
climático,
especially vulnerable to climate
presentó
change.
pérdidas de producción agrícola entre el
The
2008 y el 2018
agricultural food
con un
losses
PIB
between
nacional que
2008
fueron de
and
29 billones de dólares
2018 was of
y tan solo en el año
$29 billion.
2022 las
And just in
catástrofes
2022,
andina
the catastrophes related to
afectaron de
climate
manera directa a 3,8
affected
millones de personas
directly
en todo el mundo.
3.8 million people
Y
that
además
were
estamos
affected.
en un
And
contexto de
also, we
alta
are in the
degradación de
context of
ecosistemas,
high degradation of
el
ecosystems.
33% aproximadamente de las
33%
áreas
part
están
of
degradadas
our
en algún nivel
uh,
y
of our
además
lands is
lamentablemente
somehow
bosques,
degraded.
más del 40%
Those are
de los bosques
forests,
de
more
esta
than
región
40%
se
of the forests in a
encuentran
region
deforestados o
are
degradados.
deforested or very
Bueno,
degraded. So,
la FAO, para dar respuesta a estos desafíos
in
y
order to
con la
provide an
Agenda
answer
2030 de
and,
Naciones
to
Unidas,
support the 2030
la
agenda
organización
of
puso
the
trabajo en la
UN,
transformación
we
de los
want to
sistemas
focus our work in the
agroalimentarios
transformation of the
para
agri-food
más
systems.
eficiente y
So this is more
sostenible,
efficient,
incluyendo el empleo,
inclusive,
y así
uh,
contribuir a una mejor
and
producción,
sustainable,
una mejor nutrición,
and thus
un mejor
consider better
ambiente y una vida más
nutrition,
sostenible. Y
environment,
muy
better
importante, sin
life.
dejar a nadie atrás.
Most importantly, no one
Este nuevo marco
is left
político de la
behind.
FAO que
So
parte
this
desde
new framework of FAO
2022
that starts in 2022 and that has some
2030
time as a deadline 2031
basa su trabajo técnico en
is
estos
basing their
4 ejes.
technical
Mejor
work
producción,
in these four
bienestar,
areas. Better
garantizar la
production, what does
estabilidad
that
de
mean?
producción y producción sostenible,
Guarantee the promotes for sustainable production through supply chains for food and agriculture that are efficient and inclusive, ensuring the resilience of these systems in climate and environmental conditions that are adverse or changing. Better nutrition, that is ending hunger, achieve food security and better nutrition, promoting nutritious food, and increasing the access to healthy diets. Then we have better environment, which is protecting, strengthening, and promoting the sustainable use of ecosystems, both on land and sea, and fight climate change. And the fourth pillar is better life, which is about promoting inclusive growth through the reduction of inequality. Inequalities such as urban and rural areas, among countries with higher income or lower income, and also inequalities such as between men and women. And added to all of these four pillars of work that we have in FAO, this strategic framework and the organizations identifies cross-sectional topics to all of the work. So we have gender, youth, and inclusion. And all of this is, we highlight here, that this is an important topic that we need to take into account in all of the programmatic spheres, in all of the work areas that the organization has, and that requires also particular visibility.
Entonces, ¿cómo estamos desde FAO abarcando el trabajo de la juventud? La
So,
FAO
how are we
reconoce a las
taking on at FAO
las mujeres
the
jóvenes,
rural youth? FAO recognizes youth, indigenous people as key aspects of the agro-food systems and the constitution of the SDGs. FAO understands and recognizes in its task that youth are those that have most disposition to change. They have more willingness not only to have sustainable agro systems, but more equanimous profile. They have willingness to change, promote innovation, set forth innovation, adoption of new technologies, new forms of production on site, and new production beyond the regular and traditional production. They bring new ideas and new ways of organization. Notwithstanding all these contributions that rural youth brings for transformation, we recognize that it is an obstacle when one considers access to work. In the agro systems, there is a lack of economic opportunities to make it attractive to youth, but they must involve decent employment. When we think about this, there are many informal and temporary jobs that is not attractive to youth. And we realize that we see that there is aging in agro, and there is a big migration of youth from rural areas to urban centers. Youth, in particular rural youth, have limited access to productive resources that would allow them to become involved in the agro systems, to have more access to financing, access to training, technical assistance, access to land. These make it more difficult for youth to participate in this environment. There is also a recognition that that the lack of access of education, it is limited, and information is low quality and not aligned with the labor market demands and the new trends, and that which is available does not comply with what is required for agro system production, trade, and etc. And lastly, I believe that is one of the topics that are part of this dialogue today. There are insufficient opportunities to participate in public policy and strategic dialogue. We have seen in the last period of time that there is the voice of youth being relevant on topic, on development in the rural area, inequalities. There is, notwithstanding, a long path ahead, and this quota of inclusion of youth is finally reflected in not involving their recommendations or viewpoints, and this is a task we need to work on. And in addition, from FAO, we understand that youth has difficulties to insert themselves in agro-food systems. But in addition to that, we have women, indigenous people, Afro-descendants, people with disabilities, among others. And it's important to tackle these issues in the agendas that are being implemented at a regional level. We need to have this consideration in mind. Therefore, what are we doing from the standpoint of FAO to tackle these issues that I set forth in the previous image? We need to support the visibility and strengthening of the role of rural youth and the challenges and contributions that they make in the agri-food systems and the relevance of youth. Position the issue of youth in the regional integration, political dialogues, governments and regional integration, and knowledge and how we can handle all these topics, and that youth is in the agendas and that agri-food systems are in this agenda. Another aspect we carry out at FAO, we support the participation of rural youth in spaces of dialogue and policy advocacy. There are fora of ministers of youth, the fora of governments, and it is at that point that although it's just taking off, it is necessary that we as United Nations and FAO, that we support the voice of youth to ensure that they are present in these discussions. And I will tell you how we have done these implementation in the last 2 years. We need to establish a coordination system for youth, for agri-food systems from Latin America and the Caribbean, because we have realized that there are many spaces at the regional level for youth to participate at these dialogue forum. Many of these groups do not connect or dialogue amongst themselves. We need to coordinate this so that we have youth involved at a higher political incidence. The objective is to coordinate the participation and incidence of decision-making paths of agri-food systems and meanwhile achieving the SDGs. It is very important to have a special focus on these topics. We also have a significant aspect that we have been discussing there, because there are youth spaces and moments for youth. It is very important that we include rural youth. Many of these groups in the rural areas are marginalized from these discussions, and they need to be a part of the discussion and their voices heard, because many a times the inequalities are present on topics related to crops and other agro-linked aspects, and it's important to hear their voice and demands. We also work in good practices, promoting the exchange of experiences at the rural area, strengthening their capacities. We have many courses for capacity building on field that I can tell you about it later. In order to support this transition towards sustainable development through entrepreneur processes and necessary employment. We also have areas where we train youth in audiovisual aspects for digital marketing, and also some information for youth in training in various topics related to FAO. In the next image, you will see some discussions that have taken place from FAO. Here we see on the left-hand side the Rural Youth Fora, which was Latin American Caribbean meeting on family farming in 2022, where we worked with regional mechanisms like REAF, SICA from Central America. We were able to organize a moment in which the youth was able to discuss, set forth their demands, their interests, their concerns, and so that these recommendations would be integrated into the analysis and discussions taking place. On the right-hand side, you will see the Youth Forum, which was carried out in the Caribbean Week of Agriculture in 2023, and we supported the dialogue, how youth is being included in the agri-food systems, the Caribbean youth. We had some that presented their experience, and also some government involvement, which dialogued with youth groups. Other groups that we have supported is the World Food Forum that connects youth of all the world, and it also has a regional chapters. Here you will see on the left-hand side the dialogue that was carried out for our youth in Latin America and the Caribbean that have different backgrounds, very diverse, in order to discuss their concerns, their ideas that would like to be a part of the transformation process. We had the 2030 LAC Youth Forum that is carried out every year in the framework of Latin America and the Caribbean Sustainable Development, which gathers all the governments in the region to discuss around the SDGs that are being developed during the year. And we also involve youth so that they can set forth their opinions. And on the right-hand side, you can also see a fora that was carried out for rural youth, the Rural Youth Forum that was done at the world level. We had all the experiences exposed. We talked about their opinions, what are the new trends, what concerns they have, and how they can provide their vision and input. I would also like to show you that in the framework of exchange of experiences, you can see online dialogues that we facilitated last year, where we discussed how to send the youth voices at high level in aspects of sustainable development, which is carried out every year in New York, and also the fora in the framework of the World Forum, and also the political and policy development areas that are of interest of rural youth, and they want to acquire more training and capacity building. And with this, I will conclude. This is my last overhead, probably the last one. How do we see our priorities from looking forward? And it is very important to have your feedback. There are topics that we might be leaving out. There are certain topics that are no longer of significance or vital. What are the areas that you would like to participate in? Which are the tools that you are seeking? We would like to hear your feedback to ensure that we're on the right path and that we understand the recommendations and requests that you set forth so that we can do our job appropriately. FAO will continue to encourage youth involvement in our programmatic involvement with government to ensure that we can imply the voice of youth in public policies and development, and to set forth the agenda of the rural youth in political dialogues and the participation to strengthen the country's capacity in forums that are carried out, as I mentioned previously, which are done on an annual basis. We will continue encouraging the participation, but also through training tools to involve them with the right paths in order to include them in these dialogues that are strategic in nature. We will continue strengthening and broaden the capacity building, supporting the exchange of experiences so that they can acquire tools capacities and knowledge so that they can have jobs, green jobs, access land in the production, in trade, and so on. The generation of evidence for decision-making dialogues. What is the contribution of youth, qualitatively and quantitatively, and also how to have a methodological support that indicates the evidences that we can set forth and what youth can build. Youth requires more development to continue in these areas. What are these key aspects? Or these are the considerations that we have for the next 2 years: involvement, particularly issues linked to green jobs, sustainable environment, helping to mitigate the climate change, everything involved to climate change, access to land. These are issues that are key to FAO's support, also access to land and have their own land to develop. We know youth have a great aptitude and capacity to develop technology and innovation in family training. So we want to involve the opportunities of family farming and innovation in these agri-food systems. And of course, a great emphasis on recognizing diversities in youth as a group, what the challenges are, what are the characteristics of each group, of what youth looks like: women, indigenous descent, Afro-descendants. And I would like to mention finally, we want to understand your priorities, your queries. We want to incorporate this. We're very enthusiastic about this. And I would like the next part of this conversation to help in what takes on now. I will be present
para ver cómo podemos seguir fortaleciendo
at
este
the
trabajo.
end, waiting to receive your recommendations so we can have a regional agenda. Thank you very much. Thank you, Valentina. You finished right on time. What you have set forth is very important and relevant for all of
Se hayan quedado
us.
como
And I hope you took some notes. I hope that you have some ideas in mind, because this will help us with the work that we have ahead of us. Valentina talked about the four betters: for better production, nutrition, environment, and better life, because we will be discussing these topics in the different groups. She set forth some very clear ideas of these four betters. And above all, she referred to what has been done, the fact that FAO has been supporting these processes. And the last aspect, which we believe is very important: how youth is going to work in the next 2 years. What will be the agenda? What will be the topics? Where we will be working and centering our energies on? She also talked about inclusion, ensuring the involvement, political dialogue, the generation of evidence and topic matters that are significant, because we talk about management, right? And of resources, how youth can participate. This is vital because Valentina has set forth ideas where we can improve. When we talk about political dialogue, how would youth have youth involvement? How can they participate? How can they be a part of the path? Thank you, Valentina. Thank you for this input, which are very clear, and how we can discuss these on these different groups. We will begin now on this section. We will begin with the groups, with each one of these betters. Before we go to this distribution of groups, I would like to mention that we will have the support of our youth, of Youth Alliance and other players. that I wanted to mention.
Va a estar
Better
Megali
production. We will have Magali Rivera
Continente de Mujeres Indígenas de las Américas,
from
SECMIA,
the continental group. Better nutrition, we will have
Mejor Medio Ambiente,
Malegme, and then better environment, we thank Nicolas Domke Venegas, representative of youth of the coordination of the United Nations, as a facilitator with Juan David Caro, who is part of the World Forum on Nutrition. And the last one, which has to do with better life, I'm going to be there supporting as a facilitator. Therefore, I did a preliminary discussion now for youth that are supporting, that are providing community support and being a part of the incidence analysis. So what are we going to be discussing on each one of these groups? We're going to take the four betters, as Valentina mentioned. I'm going to answer these questions. First, what are the areas or priorities as a youth in food and agriculture? How can governments and FAO take up these priorities in national or regional programs? I'm going to read very quickly the questions. Notwithstanding, the facilitators will have these questions and will tackle them at each meeting, at each moment. The next question is, what mechanisms are needed to ensure better production, better nutrition, better environment, better life for young people? And how can FAO and the governments take up these priorities at a national, regional level? Now we will divide in groups. I would like to remind you that each group will have a spokesperson and a rapporteur, and the colleague that will be facilitating the groups will assign the tasks. So to distribute the groups, I would like to ask each participant in this Zoom room to mention what group you would like to be a part of. Just raise your hand. Those that would like to be in better nutrition is going to be here in the main room, which will have a simultaneous interpreting. And so from English into Spanish. So just remain in this room. That's better nutrition, room 1. Number 2 is the environment. Number 3 is better life. So those that would like to go to group 1, then group 2 and group 3. Thank you for the technical team. And whoever wants to be in the better environment, just raise your hand or put it on your chat if you like. Just give me one. Better nutrition, just raise your hand.
¿Alguien más en mejor nutrición? Ok, entonces ahora podemos... Leonardo, entonces
All
mejor nutrición.
right, so we have better nutrition.
Última oportunidad para mejor nutrición.
Last chance for better nutrition.
Listo, entonces ahora vamos
All right, then let's go to better environment. Please raise your hands, those that want to go to those rooms.
Vamos.
Let's go. 1 second. Better environment.
Mejor medio ambiente. segundo.
1 second.
Listo. Entonces, por último, vamos
Ready then.
con la sala una
So
vez
let's go to Better Life then, last room.
su mano.
Raise your hands for Better Life.
Una vida mejor, sala una vida mejor.
Better Life.
Perfecto. Última vuelta.
Last one.
Después
Last
de la
chance.
sala principal,
For
¿alguien
those
quiere
here in the main room,
a Mejor
anyone
Nutrición
would like to go to Better
ahora?
Nutrition, raise their hand now.
Staying en la mejor nutrición, ¿cierto?
Am I in Better Nutrition now?
Mejor nutrición, ¿alguien más?
Better Nutrition, anyone else?
Listo, entonces, última vuelta para mejor medio ambiente.
Last chance for Better Environment.
André, disculpa, ¿me puedes escribir en el chat a qué sala quieres ir?
Andrea, can you please write in the chat what room do you want to go to?
Gracias.
Thank you.
Cindy, entonces, a mejor medio ambiente.
Silvia, Better Environment.
Listo, ¿alguien más con una vida mejor?
All good. Better Life.
A mí en mejor medio ambiente, por favor.
Yeah. Also me,
Perdón,
Better
¿puedes repetir tu
Environment.
nombre?
I'm sorry, who were you? Can you say your name?
En mejor
Ronald
medio ambiente.
Caicedo,
Excelente.
Better Environment.
Ya vas, mejor medio ambiente. Listo. Todas las salas asignadas. André
All
Gómez.
rooms assigned.
Esta sala es André. Gazul también
Is
en esta sala
this
principal,
room
mejor medio
Andre?
ambiente. Adelante.
It's also Better Environment. Go ahead.
Medali, no te veo aquí en la sala principal.
Annalene, I don't see you here in the main room.
Ya voy, Gustavo.
Gustavo,
Ambiente.
Better Environment.
Pablo.
Pablo,
Es que tengo a Medali
yeah.
Rivera en la
I have
sala
Medalis
1,
Rivera
aquí en
in
la sala
room
principal.
1 and should be here in the main room.
¿Me ayudas, porfa?
Give me a hand, please.
Sí, Medali.
Medalis.
Bueno, en lo que Medali logra conectar su audio.
While Medalit is logging in,
Perdón, estoy con el video apagado. Soy
I'm sorry, my
Marcela
video was off.
FAO. Les voy a
I'm Marcela
ayudar
Gurkian from
a
FAO.
esta sala mientras logramos
I'm gonna
conectar
help you in this room
nuevamente.
while Medalin can go in.
Como les mencionaba Laura, la idea
O
es
sea, as Laura was
trabajar
saying,
sobre las preguntas
the idea is
que les
working
voy
on
a
the
mostrar a
questions
continuación
that I'm gonna be showing you next,
y que puedan hacer su aporte, dejar sus
so you
opiniones.
can make your contributions, leave your opinions.
Pueden ir
So leave your microphones and cameras. And this is question number 1. What are the areas or priorities of the youth in food and agriculture? And how states and FAO can take back on these priorities in the national or regional programs? If anyone would like to start with a dialogue. Welcome all of the opinions. Here have a lot of people. John, Jose. Anyone would like to break the ice? Or you're going to be called by name like in school?
Claro. Si estoy en el grupo correcto, este es el grupo de mejor.
I'm in the right group. Is this better production? Yes. Yes, it is better production. So, Medley, I see you there. So, if anyone would like to begin the discussion, I see you, Medley. So, who would like to begin? Jose, John, Leonardo. Question number 1 that we get on the screen. You don't have a lot of time. Speak now or further hold your peace. I think, hello, I am part of youth from the Scientific Society of Agroecology, and I believe these are several priorities of the youth in this area. Among them, as we mentioned on the slide, one is right to land, especially for women, and these spaces are always a challenge. So for all of the youth, but specifically for women, I am in Mexico, and it's still a challenge for communities to act. This is a challenge for women in the communities to access the land. Another priority that I believe it's important for agriculture is to ensure being clean agriculture that is taking on the practices on clean, healthy practices such as agroecology. And I believe that another priority, you let me know, another priority that for the youth as well is, as it was mentioned, having access to programs not only that ensure the participation of, so they take into account the proposals and the voice, as well as maybe I'll stop there. So I gave you some time for comments. Thank you very much, Alexine. Anyone else would like to make a proposal or mention a topic they believe should be highlighted in this question? Natalie, I have you there. I believe your microphone already functions. It's working, right? All right, I see you, but we're all here taking note. If you need something, let us know over WhatsApp. Anyone else would like to make a proposal? Leonardo, John, I see that we had Ignacia. Gazul. Question number 1.
Vamos a ir a la pregunta número 2 en el intertanto, entonces.
Let's go
¿Qué
to question number 2. In the meantime, what mechanisms are necessary to guarantee better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life in the youth? And how do states and FAO, how can they guarantee their leadership and spokesmanship? Please open your microphones for those who want to participate. I remind you this group is being broadcasted, so don't stay quiet. So people see that the youth is participating and wants to speak. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes, John, go ahead. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm not switching on my camera because sadly my reception is very poor and I've had a lot of interference in my connection and I've lost some moments of the meeting, but well, I'm John Kenneth Quintana from the Network of Youth of Latin America, the Caribbean. I'm gonna try to give you an idea because I get out of this a little bit. So something very important, and it was already pointed out, and this is the issue of innovation. So one of the concerns is that we have a lot of the youth in the cities, indigenous children, and of all social origins that are suffering from malnutrition. And apart from that, there's also an issue that the products have a lot of chemicals. In that sense, maybe we can say, what can we do about that? What solutions do we give to that? So I believe it will be good, a topic of innovation to cater for that situation. But then me, for instance, I have some ideas in mind. I have some projects, but sometimes to make this reality, sometimes you need resources. So money, basically, and also technical support, because not just that, that is also a topic of how we manage the marketing, etc. Because we also need a production of land, a suitable production of land, production according to the characteristics of the ecosystem in the region, based on needs and based on all of that. But then I believe that there are some entities that have experience on that in that sense and can facilitate those tools so we can, based on the experiences of how we produce these things, because we don't know what is produced in all of the region. We don't know all the details. So what is this? Maybe there's other things that we might not know, or maybe they can be strengthened to collaborate to cater those needs that we have. Let's say like the malnutrition of children, lack of, what do you call that, food in cities, suitable food. So in that sense, I would say innovation, but also support innovation with resources, having funds where you as youth can go and present your project and possibly get funding, maybe do mentorships as well. I believe I've seen somewhere there some ideas, even I believe, I'm not sure, I'm not very certain, but if you has something there, I was reading it, but it seems interesting to strengthen that part. I am here in the region in the Amazonia, in Colombia, and here you can contribute a lot to, but we have a lot to do now, but they can contribute to us from the point of view of knowledges that has been given to us, but also we need those tools so we can together progress in those topics. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participating. As I was saying, maybe it is a bit out of context, but since I'm here, I don't have a lot of good reception, but I'm still wanted to say something. Thank you very much, John. Thank you much for your comments. I have two hands raised. Let's go first with Nemo.
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Nemo de Coprofan. Quisiera hacer algunos aportes en
Hola,
nombre de
I am Nemo from Coprofam, and I want to speak on behalf of youth.
Sobre la primera pregunta,
On the first question, if I may, the first point I would say is in technical innovation, as my colleague John mentioned, to increase it not only to technologies for production, but that which relates to trade. For example, technology for product traceability, we believe is fundamental for youth, which have been a good way of as a result of the pandemic. Now, in reference to the second point, how can FAO take on those priorities? I believe that an important point is FAO's dialogue with nations, particularly with countries that do not have family agriculture organizations. I believe the constitution of committees at a national level for agri-food systems, CONSEA in Brazil, the family and farmers coordination with a very clear space for youth, for leaders in youth, with a voice and vote in those committees. Committees, of course, that are multi-profile civil society, national, regional involvement, and to create an interface which goes with question number 2. That's what I would like to state. That's for the moment. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Nemo, very much. Jonathan, tell us. To continue and adding on to what has been set forth by my colleagues, I think it's important to generate knowledge exchange amongst youth. But another mechanism that I find vital, and which of the two questions are you answering? On the second one, on the mechanisms, if you will. Yes, I believe that a significant mechanism to strengthen youth is the exchange of knowledge amongst youth, to recognize that we have knowledge that could support agri-food systems, and also to generate processes where the autonomy of youth is very important. When we talk about technology and processing, many times historically youth have been instrumentalized to distribute technology, but were never asked what we want to do in our lands. And I think it is important to strengthen the capacity to decide autonomously on our own lands and that which is paired to technology. For example, these can be programs that could be linked to strengthen these mechanisms, action-based mechanisms.
Para la primera pregunta.
And just to complete the first question, yeah. What would be the areas or priorities for youth in agri-food systems? I think we believe that it's very important and core to agroecological aspect. It has to do with crops culture that are different, as our friends were saying before. Trade, manners in which one can trade that will respect also the ecological processes. Therefore, that type of agriculture is what we are mainly referring to. Agriculture that will not have agrotoxins, which we call clean agriculture. When we talk about new technologies, uh, technologies have to make sense of in and awareness of this kind of agriculture. When we talk about technologies, we don't talk about recovering the exchange of ideas and recover farmers' knowledge which already exists, and that technology comes to help. Yeah, cleaner, yes, and more sustainable in time.
Muchísimas gracias. Marcia se tiene que
Thank you
retirar,
very
así
much.
que voy a seguir yo mientras
Marcin needs to leave for an instance. I will continue the discussion. Does anyone else have their hand raised that would like to continue to respond to both question 1 and 2, the mechanisms that allows for better production and better nutrition, environment, and life? And this question is very interesting and very useful for us to continue with our work. How FAO or the governments can continue guaranteeing the voice of youth in decision-making processes? Hello? Hello? Oh, yes. I am Medalis.
No sé si me escuchan.
Hi, Medalis.
escuchamos bien.
Problemas con
Can you hear me? Yes, we can. I've had some problems with the audio. I solved it now. Yes, we can hear you, please. I would like to add to what has been mentioned. Colleagues, I believe that there is a very important feature of youth today, particularly those of us that are part of communities and work and live in the rural area. We are not inheriting the knowledge of, in Peru, particularly in the Andean area, where we have seen that youth is not involved in agriculture, and we are losing the knowledge from the older generation. And in that which relates to innovation, it has improved enormously because there are better devices that are being utilized to improve agriculture. The use of tractors, it facilitates the fact that you can have a better production. From another standpoint, we see difficulties, and we're talking about production per se. I'm not sure that FAO can be involved in this aspect, but sometimes value is not given to the raw material, which is the production. And this is a problem that we see as part of the production. There is no cost of living. People acquire them, certainly, but the product comes back at a much, much higher cost. And I am not sure if FAO can become involved in add value to the raw material, to the production generated by farming families, those that actually do the agriculture of crops and so on. In addition, I have heard good feedback and I have agreed with what has been said.
Mejorar la redacción de alguno de los puntos que ya están mencionados.
If you'd like to improve on what is written, would you like to discuss other topics? Whatever you have added to the chat, I have added. Please, if you have any other comments based on the questions, we can include them. Do you have any other comments beyond the questions? The floor is yours. Please set forth your ideas. Go ahead. I just wanted to mention the right to land and as points. If you agree, of course, it would also include the ownership of land in the hands of youth, whether individual or collective lands, that youth have rights to be the owners of their land, of the land. Individual ownership. And on behalf and considering the potential of the dialogue that FAO has with different countries, could be a technical support of FAO to uptake data, studies, analysis that would set forth the input provided by youth of the agricultural done in the farmers and indigenous rural farmers. Thank you. I wanted to comment that in the previous number, in the previous question on number one, yes, access to land is different to training on trade or entrepreneurial developments. I would put them separately. I don't know if it's a program or a mechanism. I think training on entrepreneurial management courses, for example, are different. The entrepreneurial, it sounds complicated, this title, but there are mechanisms that I've heard with a great deal of cooperatives, strengthening cooperatives. I've heard them in English, such as and strengthen of cooperatives, community cooperatives that can be managed from the territories themselves. I just wanted to say that I'm a little scared of putting words such as entrepreneurial in general terms and not ensure that we're talking of a process that we can manage and self-manage and which will be functional to us and complying with our interests. Thank you. Perfect.
¿Alguien más?
Very well. Anyone else?
Creo que en este sentido de
I believe that from that standpoint, farmers, technology, in addition to discussing, we have to have intergenerational dialogue. We need to promote that. This helps us to recover the memory, the knowledge. I'm sorry, I didn't know if it was number 7. Number 7, you talk about recovering farming technologies and to promote intergenerational dialogue and seek. Yeah, that would be and seek intergenerational dialogue. The lack of transfer of knowledge to the youth, which is what Megalith was referring to, and this is happening right now, and it happens constantly. Any other points that you would like to add, Yolotzin? can't remember now.
Adelante,
For now,
voy a poner aquí estos también para que
Nemo,
sean
Nemo,
más
you want to say something?
distintos.
I'm going to write it here to ensure that it's easier
Nemo,
to see.
Ay, perdón. No, yo en el punto 4
Nemo, sorry.
acceso a
In
programas
number
que
4,
toman
where it says
en cuenta
access to
juventud,
programs that take into account
yo
youth's
diría de
proposals,
incluir
I would
a
say
la juventud
to
líneas
include youths
específicos programas o
in
políticas específicas
programs
para la juventud, porque hay
and
políticas
specific policies for youth, because there are policies and programs
deben de ser
that
específicos
at
para la
certain point
juventud
should be specific to youth,
y
differentiated, yes.
había un
And
otro punto que era de los
there was
comités
another
de
point which referred to
no
committees.
sé si estaba en la pregunta 2 no en el
I'm not
punto
sure
6
if it's in question 2 or 1.
no
I think
en
it's
el punto
point
6
6.
de la 1 perdón
It's
en
number 6 of
algunos
the first
casos
question.
de países
In some cases, there are
consejos
countries
nacionales de juventud que
that have
son
national
juventud
councils for
urbana y
youth,
rural y
which is
que
urban and
tienen
rural
buenos resultados
councils,
que también
which have
acerca el campo a la
good
ciudad
feedback.
y
It
en
brings
algunos casos
the
con diversas
farm to the
formas de
city,
agricultura
and in certain cases
periurbana.
illustrates different type of peri-urban and urban agriculture that also takes place.
perfecto.
Excellent.
Creo que sería buena idea tener una junta permanente de
It would
juventudes
be a
que
good idea to have a
con
constant
representatividad de los
meeting
países
for
de
FAO
diferentes
and
países sectores.
representatives of different countries and different
Vamos aquí en
sectors.
el punto número
Okay,
2, la
on
pregunta
number
2.
2. Number 2.
¿Alguien más? Veo aquí
Anyone
a
else?
Leonardo. Si quieres hacer algún
I see
comentario,
Leonardo. Would you
bienvenido.
like to set forth a comment? Go ahead, please. Bienvenido, welcome, Azur, and other people.
Marcela, una cosa rápida, disculpa, la pregunta 1, creo que ahí donde habla el último punto sobre conocimientos.
Marcela, on question number 1, we have the last point on ancestral and local knowledge for production. I believe there it could be very interesting to maybe do an interface with the issue of environment.
Producción y preservación ambiental o conservación del medio
Environmental, conservation, preservation, I don't know.
cultura, además cultura y medio
Culture, also culture and environment,
relacionados esos.
because they're very closely related. Production and conservation of the environment.
Aquí vamos a poner la cultura. Ya lo sí, adelante.
Please go ahead.
En el mismo tenor que dice Nemo, que creo que
It's in the
en
same one that
términos de
says,
escritura, uno es
in
el
terms of writing,
reconocimiento de los
one is
conocimientos
the
locales para conservación
acknowledgement, the
y
local
otro
knowledge of
es
conservation, and the other
que
is
tiene que ver, pero que hay que reconocer que para que
that is
podamos
related, that we need to
rescatar
acknowledge that for us to
y
rescue, retrieve knowledge, or
técnicas
apply
agroecológicas, primero se debe de
agroecological
asegurar
techniques, we first should
tener un
ensure
territorio. Creo que
having some territory.
aquí en México,
Here in
muchas de
Mexico,
las juventudes de la red indígena con
many
la que
of
colaboramos
the youth
y
from
de
the
la que
indigenous
somos
network
parte,
I
el
collaborate with and
principal
where I'm
problema
part
de
of,
acceso a la
the
tierra
main problem of access to
y de
land
poder tener una producción digna
and being
es
able
que
to
la
have
mayoría de
a
los espacios
decent
están
production is that
siendo
most places
pues saqueados por
are
grandes
being
empresas. Entonces
looted
creo que
by big
debe de haber
companies.
políticas
So
que
I
aseguren o
believe there should be
prioricen el
policies
acceso de los
that
territorios
prioritize
para los
and
pueblos.
ensure the access of territories and
Entonces creo
lands
que
to the
para
people.
poder, que más allá
So
del
I
rescate y
believe that
conocimiento,
beyond
se debe
the
de asegurar de
knowledge,
que haya, de que los pueblos
we need to
tengan derecho
ensure
a
that
sus
the
territorios.
people will have
Porque creo que
a
una
right
cosa
to
que
their
está
territories,
pasando
because
es que
one
estamos
thing that is
rescatando el
happening
conocimiento y
is
la
that we
espiritualidad
are
de los pueblos
rescuing
originarios y
the
los
knowledge
estamos
and the
olvidando de
spirituality
los
of the
pueblos originarios
original
que
people,
son
but
la
we
mayoría.
are forgetting their indigenous land and their territories.
Por ahí quizás va un poquito mejor.
Maybe there,
Sí, derechos de gestión y uso utilizamos acá del
rights of
territorio.
management and use. Here we use in the territory. Thank you.
Quizá podemos poner, perdón,
Perfect, maybe
los derechos de los pueblos.
respecting the rights of the peoples, not just the people, but the rights of the peoples.
Poner, como dicen en
And maybe we can, what is it,
Derechos de gestión y uso.
management?
Ah,
Rights
muchas
of
gracias.
management and use.
Medley.
Ellie?
Te veo. Ahí.
Sí, aquí
I
estoy.
see you. I'm here.
No sé si te gustaría complementar algo.
I don't know if there's anything else you would like to
Quizás
add.
algo más para la
Maybe
próxima,
something more for number 2.
la pregunta 2. Como
Question number
jóvenes,
2.
en realidad los que
As a
estamos
youth,
llevando la organización,
those that
escucha,
are
no, les puedo hablar
seeing
de
the
perspectiva de
organization
organización, estamos
and can speak about matters of organization,
ingresando ya a la
we
elaboración
are
de proyectos.
going to the
Entonces,
project
no sé si la FAO
assessment.
tendría acá
I don't know if
como
FAO would have,
en sí darnos esas
maybe can
facilidades
give
para poder
us
hacer
that
proyectos,
ease
o cómo
for
podemos nosotros
doing
o
projects and see
buscar
how
con
can
la FAO
we
organizaciones
find with
internacionales
FAO,
que puedan
the
financiar
international organizations that
cómo
can
hacer
fund
proyectos y mediante estos
how to
proyectos
do
hacer
projects, and
actividades.
through these
Ya se
projects have some
elaboraron, por
incidents.
ejemplo,
So
acá en
we've already
abril
done
hemos
here,
realizado proyectos
we've done this
gracias
pool,
al
like this
CINI,
project,
¿no?
thanks to CINI,
Y donde hemos
and
hablado netamente de inseguridad
where we have
alimentaria, como
spoken
ustedes
about food
conocen ese
insecurity.
término,
And many
¿no?
of you know that
Y
topic
hemos
very well.
hablado de inseguridad alimentaria, de
And we have talked
seguridad
about food
alimentaria y
insecurity
también cómo es una alimentación saludable.
and what is healthy
Entonces,
eating or a healthy
ahí
diet.
la juventud con
So
nuestro
then the
investigadores
youth,
netamente se ha dado cuenta que la producción que tienen
we have realized that the
tiene un
production that it
mayor valor
has,
mayor a lo que adquieren, ¿no?
it
Cuando
has a
hacen
greater
otras
value
tareas de
of
procesado,
what
cuando
they
está
get
procesado ese
when they
alimento.
process these
Entonces, quizás
foods.
ahí solicitar, ¿no? Como parte de la
So maybe
juventud que nos
request
apoyen
this
en
from the
ese
point of view
sentido
of
y poder
youth,
ejecutar
so they can
proyectos.
support us in that
Y que
sense
con eso
too,
podamos hacer
so they can
incidencias
execute
también.
projects, so we can have some incidents as well.
Incidencia. Perfecto. Tenemos 30 minutos todavía, así que
We still have 30 more minutes.
podemos revisar nuevamente las preguntas.
Maybe we can check the questions again.
Hacer alguna otra contribución que esté fuera de esta dos
Maybe have another
preguntas que
contribution
ustedes plantean para el trabajo.
outside of these 2 questions that we have for work.
Yo no sé si quieres hacer algún otro comentario.
I don't know if you want to make another comment, John. I see you there.
Si quieren hacer algún aporte.
If you want to make any contribution.
Estamos en el grupo de mejor producción, pero también podemos
We
hacer
are
el
in
link
better
con
production
otras si
group,
gustan.
but we can do the link with the other ones if you like.
Quizás podría dar lectura a los
Maybe
comentarios que
we
están acá
can
en el
read
chat.
the comments on the chat.
Adelante.
Please go ahead.
Ya, aquí tenemos varios comentarios de muchos
Here
de
we
los
have
compañeros.
several comments.
Está, por ejemplo,
So here we
Leonardo
have
Basurto. Está en
Leonardo
en
Basurto
nuestra sala.
in a room.
Ya, su comentario dice, muchos jóvenes están
Your
interesados
comment
en
says that
participar en la
many people
agricultura, pero
want
enfrentan
to participate
dificultades
in
para
agriculture,
acceder a
but
la
they're
tierra y los
facing
recursos necesarios.
difficulties to access land.
Entonces, es necesario implementar
So then we need to
proyectos para
implement
hacer selección
programs
de la
that
capacidad
facilitate
técnica
access to
docente de la
land
gestión empresarial. Pueden ser prioritarios.
that can be priorities.
Basul Arce, diseñar
Rasul
estrategias y
Arce says
políticas públicas
design public policy
diferenciadas
strategies that
para
are
la incorporación de
differentiated
la juventud rural.
for adding the rural
También el
youth.
mismo comentario, la
Also,
promoción
the
de
same
espacios
comment,
interdisciplinarios
promotion
dirigida a la
of institutional services intended to
sean
rural youth,
adaptables a las
and that
necesidades
they
reales
are
de cada
adapted
país.
to the real needs of
También
peoples. Also,
Yolotzin Bravo menciona que
Lucian Bravo mentions that
cree que sería buena idea tener
she
una
believes it
junta
would be a good
permanente
idea to have a
de
permanent
juventudes
meeting
que aporten a la
of
FAO
youth
y
that contribute to
gobiernos con
FAO and
representativos de los diferentes países y
governments with a
sectores.
representation of the different countries and
Esos fueron
sectors.
algunos comentarios que
So
tenemos
those are
en
some
el
of the
chat.
comments that we have here in the chat.
Quizás podríamos tomar ahí alguna idea.
Maybe we can take some.
Nemo, tu manita levantada.
Your hand is raised.
Sí, gracias. Muy rápidamente.
Yeah,
Solo
thank you.
incluir un
Very
punto que no sé si
quickly, I
está
just like to
acá,
include
pero tal
a
vez
point that
es
I'm not sure if it's there
importante.
already, but maybe matter
Que no sé
two, question
exactamente
two,
si es un mecanismo,
that I
pero
don't
en la
know if
mayoría
this is
de
always the mechanism, but I would say
que FAO en acuerdo con
that
los
FAO
estados
in
amplíen
the
el
agreement with the
presupuesto y
states
el
should
número de
expand the budget and the
programas
number of programs
disponibles,
and
no
projects that are
políticas
available.
públicas,
I
sino
do mean public
proyectos de
policies, but
cooperación
projects for
específicos para la
cooperation
juventud
that are
rural
specific
para
to
tratar
rural youth
uno o
to
más de esos temas que
deal
ustedes
with one or two of
estamos
those
levantando
topics
ahora.
that
Gracias.
we are raising now. Thank you very
Que la
much.
FAO amplíe la cantidad de
One
proyectos de
second.
cooperación.
FAO
Más lento.
cooperation projects.
Ampliación de presupuesto y número de proyectos y
Expansion of
programas
budget and number of
específicos
projects
para la
for the
juventud
specific
rural.
programs for the rural youth.
Ay, yo lo sin adelanté.
Me perdí, tiene que ver con esto que acaba de decir Nemo. Y es
So I got lost. It has to do with what I saw just now.
lo de el link entre juventudes
Where do we
urbanas
have
y
the link
juventudes
between
rurales,
urban
como
youth
el
and rural
fortalecimiento de los
youth?
lazos entre estos canales.
Like the strengthening of the
En
bonds between these two
uno,
channels? Number one,
aquí.
Mm,
here.
mm,
En el
Creo
número
que una es la participación y
I believe
otro
one is the participation and the other in terms of
fortalecer
creating and strengthening the productive chain.
más que en la producción de sistemas alimentarios,
More than the production of food systems, I believe is vital also to find,
fortalecer las alianzas entre
to
juventudes
strengthen the
rurales y
alliance
urbanas.
between rural and urban youth.
Creo que tenemos muchos ejemplos
I believe
aquí
we
en
have a lot of
México de cómo las
examples here in
juventudes
Mexico of
rurales
how the
han
urban
construido
and
nuevos,
rural youth
nuevos
have
vínculos y
built
posibilidades en
new
sistemas
links and
alimentarios y
possibilities in
agropecuarios,
the agro-food
de
systems
ayudar en esa parte
in
de
order to
transformación
aid in that
a
sense
través
in
de...
terms of
Entonces creo que
creating.
es importante
So
también
I believe it
promover
is
la
also important to
economía
strengthen
solidaria,
the
que
solidary
haya un
economy,
impulso entre economía
also to have
solidaria
a promotion between solidary economy
como una de las herramientas
as
también
one
de
of the
aporte
tools
agroecológico
of
entre juventudes
agroecological
urbanas y
support
juventudes
between
rurales,
urban and rural
que creo
youth
que además está,
that I believe
es una visión que además está
this is a
ya
vision
no
that
es
also
como no están tan en extremos juventudes rurales y
is not as
juventudes urbanas,
extreme
¿no? Hay un diálogo más
as
fluido
the
entre estos
urban youth.
espacios y hay que
We have a more
fortalecer ese
fluid
diálogo.
dialogue in these
Debido a
spaces, and we need to
que,
strengthen
como
this
ya dijeron, uno de
because,
los
as
retos
we
más
said
grandes es la
already, one of the
migración. Entonces
strongest
hay que
challenges
encontrar
here is
una de las
migration. So we
formas de
need to
encontrar
find one of
empleos
the
dignos para las
ways
juventudes
of
rurales
finding
y
a
urbanas,
decent job
porque
for rural and
pasa en ambos
urban
sectores la
youth, because
precarización
it
del
goes
trabajo,
both ways, how
para
job becomes
fortalecer
ever more precarious,
la,
how in order to
fortalecer
strengthen
a las juventudes en el marco de
the
sistemas
youth
alimentarios, también
in the agri-food
fortalecemos
systems, we should
los
also
trabajos
strengthen
y cómo
the
aportamos
jobs
a
and
esta
how do we
precarización del
contribute
trabajo en ambos sectores.
to
Creo que uno de
making
ellos es
jobs more,
fortalecer estos
making jobs
vínculos
decent in both
entre
sectors. One of
economías y
them
la economía
is to strengthen
solidaria
these
para
links
poder
between solidarity
fortalecer
economy,
economías, también
alternative
fortalecer
economies
no solo
as
las
well,
empresas grandes como grandes
not
empresas,
only the
sino también
business
fortalecer
ones as big
economías
companies, but also
alternativas.
strengthen alternative economies.
perfecto.
Perfect.
Ujú. ¿Alguien más?
Anyone else? Any other
por
comments?
guión adelante. El micrófono de
No.
ustedes.
Últimos comentarios. Y estaba pensando que
One last comment. I was thinking that when we say technical strengthening, we're talking about the strengthening of agroecological practices and techniques, but we're also talking about the strengthening of capacities generated by this autonomy of decision making in the territory. We're not just saying when we talk about improving the agri-food system, we're not just saying the productive part, but we have people that were saying at the beginning of this meeting that we are also in the formation, in pedagogical spaces, and I believe it is important to strengthen those areas so they will allow us to be agents in our decision makers in our own territories. Beyond generating public policies and programs that will make the youth more homogeneous, that the idea is that they should be allowed to express this difference from the territories, so they can be allowed to express the different decision making, because one of the agroecological principles is that territories are different. We don't have a copy-paste formula, and we need to make sure we state we don't have this copy-paste approach as a general program that will solve the difficulties of the production, but also it's about implementing policies that would strengthen the capacity of the youth to address the local problems through the local aspects as well. Sorry, can you repeat that? Policies something?
Pero no me va a ayudar, que tiene gran memoria, que fortalezcan a las
Sorry, that they should strengthen the youth to respond from the local possibilities.
Adelante.
Very importantly, what you just said, here in Brazil, we call them differentiated policies that cater the needs of subjects and based on the territories. That's very good. Only there's some things there, but I would only say now one last thing, that considering all of that FAO should include, if they don't already, so they can include in those forums and regional spaces the moments for monitoring and assessment of the results of the actions that were executed and implemented for the rural youth. So there should be a mechanism here called social control, but it's about monitoring and assessing, and recommending geopolitical adjustments for the rural youth. And I stop there. I would like to take a moment to correct this immediately. Policies and programs. I'd like to remind you again that you can maybe make more comments, I don't know, within the questions. If you would like to mention them. Available here for you. Here we have some more minutes. This comment is not related to the action of the youth. It's more a question, and I don't have a concrete answer, which is how We also can see that the states of violence in our nations, in the territories that are being occupied, have a direct influence in the possibility of occupying our territories. Here in Mexico, the drug trafficking and also mega projects are removing the possibilities of owning land, and second, of making decisions on the land.
También
And also, wait,
impiden el acceso al territorio, a la
prevent access to territory and the decision-making processes on territory,
y desplaza a los sistemas
and they displace the local agri-food
sistemas
systems,
alimentarios agroecológicos
the agroecological traditional food systems.
Y a mí me parece vital ponerlo en la mesa porque estamos
I believe
partiendo
it's vital to put it as a topic of conversation.
huyendo del campo y no es cierto. Hay razones
Youth are not running away from the fields. We are being
que hay
removed because there are mechanisms that are removing us from our land and our areas. And I think it's very important, and us as SOCLA youth, to write down that it's not that we want to leave the field or the rural area. They don't want to be in rural areas. They don't want to work in agroecological because they're reproducing the violence that is already being executed on us.
Genial.
Very good.
Genial. No sé si Medley quieres complementar.
Would anybody else like to comment on all these other comments that have been set forth? Nemo,
Complementar quizás.
would you like to comment based on what has been said?
Nos quedan varios minutos.
Yo creo que ahí, no
I
sé
believe that on that topic, I don't know if
si
this would be a part of
cuando la
these
compañera
topics,
Yolotzin
but
habla
when Yolotzin talks
de
about
migración, ¿no? De la
the
juventud,
migration of youth,
programas
there are
de arraigo son muy importantes.
programs
Entonces,
in
esos, ¿cómo se
under
llama?
this,
Digamos, de ese
we
proceso
need to
de
encourage
formación de las
programs of
entonces,
connection,
los jóvenes de esos
this
pueden
um,
seguido de recomendaciones
removal of youth. There could be recommendations, programs
faciliten
that would
no
facilitate
solo el recambio
not only
generacional, pero
the
a través
generational
de la
exchange,
juventud en la tierra.
but also of the youth and how to ensure that they are connected to their roots, an entrenchment of their roots, if you will. There are still some minutes. We can go over the question one, which has to do with the priorities of youth in food and agriculture, and how do governments and FAO have these priorities in national regional programs. That's number one. And for that, we have the implementation of programs that would facilitate access to land, prioritizing women and youth with ownership documents for individuals or collective groups, training on entrepreneurial management that could be prioritized in self-managed community, cooperative, clean agricultures that will take on practices such as agroecology, respecting the rights of the original peoples and their territories, their self-management rights and use, access to programs that will take on proposals for youth, including programs, differentiated policies for youth, technological innovation for the production and trade, and also such as traceability. To undertake the priorities with a dialogue with FAO and nations, above all those that do not have national committees for food and family farming, and with spaces for youth, rural leadership, and also urban, seeking farming technologies, encouraging intergenerational dialogue for a knowledge transfer, the rescue of local knowledge, for the production and conservation of the environment and local culture, and dignified employment for youth to reduce migration. Now, on question number 2, what are the mechanisms that we need to ensure better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life for young people, for youth? And how can states and FAO guarantee your spokesmanship and leadership? First of all, financing for the technical assistance of development of entrepreneurial aspects for rural youth, technical support for trade and the study of markets that will allow these to have profitable projects, exchange of knowledge amongst peers, autonomy for youth to work in territories via programs, design differentiated public policies that, for the incorporation of rural youth, encourage and promote institutional services that are directed to rural youth and which will be adapted to the real needs of youth, technical support by FAO to set forth youth data analysis, AFCI, to create a permanent group of youth that will provide FAO and governments their representation in different countries and sectors. That FAO supports the realization and promotion of funds that are supported that will strengthen food security from fresh foods that will allow youth to make a stand. That FAO broadens the amount of cooperative projects for rural youth, strengthen alliances between urban and rural youth, strengthen solidarity, economic solidarity as a tool to promote agroecology that would allow for migration in rural youth and links to rural and urban centers, that youth become agents of change, policies that will strengthen youth, that will respond to these lands, and that FAO facilitates the monitoring, assessment, and recommendations for political programs for rural youth and its adjustments. All right. I'm going to start from the bottom up. That FAO would facilitate monitoring assessment. What number is it? Number 15, please. Bottom up. It's not only that it will facilitate the monitoring, evaluation, or assessment and recommendation. I believe that when talking about monitoring, evaluating, and monitoring, we should include youth here. I'm not sure, but Nemo mentioned that in this process, to review results, there is also the collaboration of youth, collaboration of young youth in evaluation and monitoring of policies and programs. Sorry, I got lost there.
Marcela, lo que dice que las juventudes sean
that youth should be monitoring, evaluating, and recommending adjustments for programs and policies. Okay, so I add this here, that youth carry out the monitoring. All right. I believe that there should carry out, but also collaborate. There should be channels of collaboration, that it is not just allowing youth to do it, but that youth is also involved in, and that FAO is also involved in collaborating to carry out this monitoring. Okay, and recommendations. Medelith, I'm going upwards. Just give me a second, please. I'm sorry. Just to conclude,
me queda muy borroso. La seguridad alimentaria.
I can't see very good. The food security. I don't know what number it is.
Iba a ser el mismo aporte, es la
I
9.
was going to provide the same feedback. It's number 9.
Estamos
Yeah.
conectadas.
We are very connected. It's very good. Yes.
Que
Sovereignty
fortalezcan la soberanía alimentaria.
that will strengthen the sovereignty, the food sovereignty, in addition to security. These are different. They are not superimposed.
Sí, desde, por ejemplo, claro,
For
desde
example,
queremos
from the
que se tome más en cuenta
ethnia,
la soberanía
we
alimentaria,
want
porque
to
netamente
underline the
por-
significance of sovereignty and when talking about
es lo que
food
soberanía
production,
alimentaria, ¿no?
because the
La
indigenous woman
soberanía
talks
ya es
about
algo individual, pero soberanía es más
sovereignty.
colectivo y también
It's more
respetando las
collective and
culturas,
respecting the
toda la
cultures.
cosmovisión andina que
The,
nosotros
the
tenemos,
Andean
y el
cosmovision should be
lazo que
considered,
tenemos con la
and
madre
this link
tierra y
that
todo
we
eso
have with Mother Earth.
es
That
lo que
is
queremos más que todo impulsar.
what we want to promote. Because security is more at the individual level, she said previously.
¿Alguna otra precisión?
Any additional precisions or accurate
5 minutos ya vamos a llegar.
change? We have 5 minutes to go. The other groups are going to come back to the main room.
También, disculpa, es que no alcanzo a ver. Si me
I
pueden
can't see very well. If you can help me find.
las como programas que
As a
fortalezcan
program that will strengthen
en sus
the youth agency within their communities.
no lo veo.
What is it you can't see? Agency
Y toma decisiones
and decision making of youth in their own communities. I believe we haven't included that one. Could it be? I think we discussed it, but we didn't include it.
Aquí este es el número 2.
Number 2,
presupuesto. Estamos pensando en presupuesto,
we were talking about
presupuesto y
programs or
fortaleza.
budgets and programs that will strengthen.
Podríamos incluirlo acá quizá en el 14.
We could include it maybe in number 14. What do you think?
Que las políticas incluyan
That public policies include budgets and programs
Que fortalezcan a la, ahí está,
that will strengthen. Yes, that's it.
que fortalezcan
That will strengthen
actitudes y su agencia, quizá.
youth and their agencies and their agency
La toma de decisiones.
that is decision making rather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gracias.
Okay.
Ahí. Genial.
Okay, good.
Ahí, cosmovisiones. Melanie, no sé si quieres dar una vuelta. Ya nos
Would you like to read these? We have 3 minutes before we have to go to the presentation.
aquí
I will adjust this a little
mejor.
so that we can see it better.
Voy a ajustar la redacción para que quede más bonito.
I will put it in a nicer
La
aspect.
número 9 quizás lo podríamos poner en otros comentarios, como al final
You could put in other comments.
de que eso es un factor, por ejemplo, ¿no? De la migración.
It's a factor of migration.
Sí, lo incluimos igual acá. Que acá igual mencionamos algo, poquito pero algo. Y dejamos ahí. Vamos a a dejar acá. Entonces yo voy a dejar acá y nosotros fuimos a la sala principal. Ya, poner a Medelit, que era la moderadora y quien va a presentar.
Medalit. Who else is going to present? Who's going to present?
Medalit Marce.
Medalit Marce.
Perdón.
Sorry. Don't worry. Okay.
Y con su apellido, por supuesto. Ya nos queda un minuto. Bueno, gracias.
Okay, we have 1 minute. Thank you very much for participating, for those that were part of this group.
Gracias por asistir. Les
Thank you
comento
for
brevemente.
attending.
Laura lo va a comentar, pero todo lo que aparezca del grupo el día de hoy va a ser
Everything that
sistematizado
appears
en grupos y
today is going to be registered and will be
a
presented in the consultation of civil society, which will take place on the 28th and 29th of February.
vamos a estar
We are going to be transmitting
por las redes sociales de FAO.
through social networks during that meeting.
Si quieren participar,
If you'd like to participate, you can register. Thank you
por todos sus aportes.
for all
Voy
your
a pasar
input.
entonces la
I will
PPT,
move the PPTs when it's your turn to speak, Medalit,
yo te apoyo con
and
eso.
I will support you with that.
Ya, muchas gracias. ¿Me lo vas a pasar
Thank
por
you.
Thank you very much for giving me that over WhatsApp.
Lo proyecto yo.
Would you like to show it or
Por
should
favor?
I?
Yo lo prendo, ningún
Please.
problema. Y después lo
I'll
paso
show it
por-
then. So
Ya.
then I go to WhatsApp.
Ah.
Thank you.
Entonces vamos a esperar, se están empezando a unir.
So let's wait. We're having some people over.
Sí, hola a todas y a todos.
Hello, everyone.
Y van
Mencionar
llegando a poquito. Van llegando a poquito de todos los grupos. Se están
So
uniendo
everyone is joining back to the main
de
room.
mejor nutrición, mejor medio ambiente y una vida mejor. Vamos a esperar que regrese Laura. Para que
So let's
continúe
gonna wait
con
for
la
Laura
moderación del evento.
so she can continue moderating the event.
Espero que esta hora no se les haya hecho tan cortita.
I hope that it was not so short to you so far.
Nicolás.
Nicolas.
Marcela, gracias. Mencionar
Thank
que
you very
desde
much,
la sala
Marcela. I would like to mention that from the room
Mejor
of
Ambiente, quien va a
Better
estar
Environment,
dando el resumen es
the
Esteban
person who's
Ramírez
going to be
de
summarizing is
México.
Esteban Ramirez from Mexico. He's a national coordinator of the Given Chapter,
la plataforma de la juventud dentro del
which
Congreso
is the
de
platform
Diversidad,
of youth within the
quien va a
Congress
estar
of
dando
Diversity.
las acotaciones en esta sala.
He's
Eso,
going to
gracias.
be speaking on our behalf. Thank you very much.
Vamos a ir grupo
Right,
por
thank
grupo.
you. We're going to go group by
Así
group.
que tenemos que se
So
unan.
let's wait for
Ya llegó
everybody to
Laura.
join.
Laura, te dejo la palabra, por
Then we
favor.
get Laura. Laura, the floor is yours.
Gracias, Marcela.
Thank
Bueno,
you.
pues esperamos que hayan tenido
Well, we hope that you had
fructífero diálogo.
a very fruitful dialogue.
No sé si esperamos unos segundos en lo que termine
I don't know if you want to have a couple of seconds to have everyone finish joining
los grupos.
all of the groups.
Sí, ya están todos
Yeah.
los grupos aquí en la sala principal.
All of the groups are here in the main room.
Entonces,
All right, then.
bueno, pues
So
retomamos el diálogo
let's
temático
take
en forma
back
de
on
plenario.
the team dialogue as a
Y
plenary session
ahora
now.
es el momento
And
de
now
compartir
it is the time
precisamente lo
to share
conversado en cada uno
what was
de
talked
los
about
grupos.
on each one of the
Entonces,
groups. So then,
pues empezamos primero
let's start again with
con el grupo de la sala principal.
the group of the main room
Vamos a
then.
empezar con cada una de las mejoras.
Let's
El de
start
mejor
with each one
producción,
of the improvements.
el que
Better
facilitó
production then,
Medali.
the one facilitated by Medali.
Medali, estás.
Bueno,
Medali, if you're there.
buenas tardes, Lau, y con
Good
todos los
afternoon,
compañeros. Yo soy Medalita
everyone.
Mosquera,
I am Medali
recibo
Rivera
parte del ECNO, el enlace continental
from
de los indígenas de
on
las Américas.
behalf of
y
like
voy
that.
a ser quien va a presentar todo lo que se ha
And I'm going to
trabajado en
be
esta
representing
etapa
everything that we worked in
presente.
the main room, better
Hemos
production.
tenido una
So
larga conversación
we've had a
con
long
muchos aportes
conversation
y muy interesante
with a lot of stakeholders, a
para
very
que
interesting
toda la
conversation, always with the
población
purpose
pueda escuchar,
of
¿no?
being
La voz de
heard,
los jóvenes
the
también
voice of the youth as well,
también conocimientos y
also
experiencias,
knowledge
¿no?
and
Vamos a
experience. So
empezar
let's
con la primera
start
pregunta,
with the first
que es
question.
cuáles son las
What are the
tareas y
areas or
capacidades de los
priorities of the
estudiantes
youth
en el
in
agricultura?
food
¿De
and
qué manera los
agriculture?
estados y la FAO
How
pueden retomar
the
esas
states and
prioridades
FAO
en
can
los
take back
programas
on these
nacionales o
priorities
regionales?
in the national
Hemos
or regional programs?
recopilado en
We've
sí
gathered
8 puntos importantes que
8
hemos
important
considerado
points,
más esenciales, ¿no?
and
Uno,
we've considered the most
implementar
essential ones.
programas que
One
faciliten el
is
acceso
implementing
a la
programs that will
tierra,
facilitate
dando
access to
prioridad a las
land,
mujeres y jóvenes
giving some priority to
títulos
women
a
and
nivel
youth
individual o de manera
as individual title
individual.
holders.
Número dos,
Number
capacitación
two,
en gestión empresarial
training
pueden
in
ser
business management.
prioritarios en
They can be
cooperativas
a priority
comunitarias
in
autogestionadas.
community
Número
co-ops
tres,
that are
una
self-managed.
agricultura
Number
limpia,
three, we
donde
have
tomen
clean
prácticas
agriculture
como la
that take
agroecología.
practices such as
Esto respetando
agroecology,
los derechos de los pueblos
respecting the
originarios y sus
rights of
territorios,
the indigenous
¿no? Y
people
también
and their
gestión de
territories, and
derechos de
also
gestión y uso.
having rights
Cuatro,
of management and use.
tener acceso a
Four,
programas que tomen en cuenta las
access
propuestas de la
to
juventud,
programs that take into
incluyendo
account the
programas y
proposals of youth,
políticas
including
diferenciadas
programs
para
and
la
policies that
juventud.
are differentiated
Número
for the youth.
5, es
Number
importante la
5,
información
it is
tecnológica para la
important to have
producción y
technological information for
comercialización con
their
la
production
trazabilidad.
and trading,
6,
things such
retomar
as
las
traceability.
prioridades por medio
6,
del
taking back
diálogo
on the
de
priorities
FAO
through a
con los
dialogue
países
of FAO
y
with the
sobre todo
countries,
con aquellos
and especially
países que no tienen comités
with those
nacionales
countries that don't
de la
have
agricultura
national
familiar y
food
campesina,
committees
con
or family
equipos
agriculture
para el
committees,
liderazgo de las juventudes
and
rurales
also the
y
leadership
urbanas, ¿no? Hemos
for the
tratado de
urban
incluir
and rural youth.
a
We've
los
tried to
dos
include
lados de la
both
juventud
sides of
rurales
the
y urbana,
youth, rural and urban,
creando consejos nacionales de juventud.
creating national councils for
7,
youth,
recuperar las tecnologías campesinas, conectando
regaining the
diálogos
farming technologies,
intergeneracionales,
and
esto
having
para promover
intergenerational
la
dialogues
transferencia de conocimiento.
for the transfer of
Número
knowledge.
8, rescate
Number
de
8,
conocimientos locales para la producción y conservación
rescuing
teniendo en
local
cuenta el
knowledge for the production and the
environment.
conservation of the environment,
Esos son
considering
los
the local
8 puntos
culture.
importantes que
So
hemos
these are the
considerado en la
8
primera
important
pregunta.
points
Vamos a
we have
pasar
in
a
the
la
question,
segunda
and
pregunta,
now we go to the second
donde nos
question, where
interrogan, ¿qué mecanismos son
we
necesarios
are
para
asked what
garantizar una
mechanisms
mejor
are necessary
producción,
to
una mejor
guarantee better
nutrición, un
production,
mejor
better
medio
nutrition,
ambiente
better
y un
environment,
mejor
and
entorno
better
rural?
life in the
¿Y de
youth.
qué manera
And how
y la
can the
FAO
states
pueden
and
aportar
FAO
energía y liderazgo?
can guarantee their
Hemos
spokesmanship and leadership?
aquí 15 puntos
So we've written down
importantísimos,
here
¿no?
who
Y
subscribes
eso
to this.
nace
It's very
de
important, and
nuestra
this is based
experiencia y de lo que
on our
nosotros
own
hemos
experience and
visto.
what we started seeing.
Uno, financiamiento y
First,
asistencia
funding
técnica
and
para el
technical
desarrollo de
assistance
emprendimientos de jóvenes
for the
rurales.
challenges of
Número 2,
entrepreneurs.
asistencia
Number
técnica para la
2, technical
comercialización
assistance
y el estudio
for
del
the
mercado que
trading
permita
and the
tener
market
el
study that will
crecimiento.
allow to
Número
have
3,
profitable
intercambio de
projects. Number 3,
conocimientos entre pares.
exchange of knowledge
Entre pares. Número 4,
among peers.
dar
4,
autonomía a las
provide
juventudes
autonomy to the youth
para trabajar en los
to work
territorios
in
de
the
forma
territories
vertical.
through programs.
Número 5, diseñar estrategias
Number,
políticas
number
públicas
5, designing
diferenciadas
strategies of
hoy
public policies that are
hacia la
differentiated
juventud rural.
for adding
Número
the
6,
youth.
la promoción
Number
de
3, the promotion of these, number 6, the promotion of services and institutional services directed to the rural youth that are adaptable to the actual needs of the
Número
youth.
7,
Number 7,
es importante
it
tener
is
un
important
apoyo
to have
técnico de
technical
la FAO para el
assistance from
relevamiento de
FAO
datos de
to
la juventud
provide it to the
rural,
youth.
familiar, campesina. Junta 8, junta
8,
permanente, ¿no? Hemos puesto
permanent,
eso como un punto importante, tener una junta
a permanent
permanente de
board
jóvenes
of the
agricultores
youth
que aporten a
that
su
will contribute to
participación
FAO and the
en las
government
actividades de
with
diferentes países y sectores.
representation of the different
Número
countries
9,
and
que la
sectors.
FAO
Number
contribuya
9,
a la
that
realización de
FAO will
postulación de
contribute to the
fondos y
making or
proyectos que
application to funds
fortalezcan
and
la
projects that will
soberanía y
strengthen
seguridad alimentaria
the
desde
food sovereignty
alimentos
and
frescos que
security
permitan a la
from
juventud
fresh foods
autosuficiencia
So the youth is allowed to have some incidents here respecting their culture and cosmovision. Number 10, that FAO would expand the number of projects for specific cooperation for the rural youth. 11, strengthening the bond between urban and rural youth. 12, strengthen the solidarity economy as a tool for the promotion of agroecology that will allow to decrease the migration of rural youth. So bonds are done between the youth, rural and urban youth. 13, that the youth become agents of changes in their territories. 14, policies that would include a budget that will strengthen the youth and the decision making so they can respond to from their places and territories. 15, the FAO and the youth will collaborate to do a monitoring of assessment and recommendation that um, that work for adjustments in the policies for the rural youth. Finally, we have more comments related to what we've mentioned. Next one, please. Other comments. How do we view the states of violence? How do we view the state of violence in a region? What prevent the access to territory access and the decision making on this and displace the agroecological food systems and traditional food systems? Also assess the actions that displace the youth from the rural areas, promote routing programs in the rural territories, and also decent jobs for the youth so as to decrease migration. Those are the points that we gather now. And with that, I finish. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Medali.
Thank you very much, Medalis.
Continuamos con el grupo de mejor nutrición con
Let's continue with better nutrition. Medalis.
¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes, ¿me escuchan bien?
How do you do? Can you hear me?
Sí, te escucho bien.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Bien, estuvimos conversando
Very
un
well
poquito
then.
de mejor
We were
nutrición.
talking about better nutrition,
Y bueno, respondíamos a la pregunta sobre cuáles
and
son
we
las
were
áreas o
answering the
prioridades
question
de
of
la
what are the
juventud en la
areas
alimentación y la
or priorities
agricultura.
of
De
youth
esta
in
forma,
food and agriculture. In this way,
debido a nuestros contextos
given
geopolíticos,
our geopolitical
tanto como
contexts,
económicos, no podemos
both
hablar
economic
fácilmente
and
de
others,
mejorar la
we can't
alimentación y la
easily
agricultura
speak of just
sin nuestros
improving
contextos
food and agriculture if
de las
our
políticas
context, the food policies,
nutricionales, como lo es
have
en el
not been
caso de
reformed,
Guatemala, que
as it is in the case of Guatemala,
el
where
ente que
the
permite
entity
acceder a
that
tierras con
allows
facilidad en teoría
access to land with ease in theory
pone como muchos obstáculos para poder acceder. Es
puts a
decir,
lot of
obstáculos que
obstacles
los
to
jóvenes no
access,
nos permiten.
obstacles that the youth can't overcome.
Por ejemplo, tienes que
Such as, for
tener,
instance, you need to have,
tienes que ser analfabeta o tienes que
you need to
tener
be
cierta cantidad de hijos. En
unable
ese
to read
sentido,
or
para los
write and have
jóvenes,
a certain number of
podríamos
children.
decirnos
In that sense,
reproducir bien
to the
y
youth, it's
tener
a way of
bonitos.
telling us,
Entonces, el cómo
do not study and
nuestra
just
vida es
breed like
variada
bunnies.
también afecta
But this is a policy that also affects
Madely,
Madeline.
Creo que
Madeline,
tuvo un problema de conexión, ¿no?
I believe she has a
sí.
connection problem.
Igual alguien de su grupo,
Anyone from
del
her
grupo
group,
que estuvo en
maybe,
nutrición, si quiere continuar,
from the group in
por
nutrition, if you
favor,
want to continue and take off where
en lo
Madeline's
que se
left
recupera
off
la conexión de Madeli.
while, while Madeline comes back online.
Ah, ya regresó.
Perdón.
I'm back,
Ok,
sorry.
entonces, como lo estaba diciendo,
So,
esta
as I was
política
saying,
debería
this is
reformarse
a
para
policy
la
that should be
mirada desde las
reformed,
juventudes,
but with a
para que
point of
nosotros
view
también
from the
podamos
youth, so
entender
we can also
cuáles son las
define
realidades, cuáles son las
what
situaciones
are the
que están
realities, what are the
aconteciendo en nuestros
situations
territorios
that are taking
y de
place in our
esa forma
territories,
también
and in that way
abrir
also
espacio para que esas
open
políticas
spaces
no
so
sean
these
exclusivas y
policies
no nos hagan quedar
we not be exclusive and don't leave us, maybe leave aside our studies or having to prefer to have children at an age where we don't allow ourselves to be in that context yet. So when we're talking about migration, internal and external, which is a very negative factor because we are leaving the tourists and at times families sometimes that have crops, sometimes they get good harvest, but when there's migration, there's not enough labor for the harvest. So therefore, clearly, many times crops go to waste because it can't be harvested, they say in the field, and that's a waste for food because these are not sold, they never get to the market, and in general, they go to waste. In the same way, surveying and providing visibility to the realities, we believe that this is an excellent way in which the states and FAO can take back on these priorities, and it will be surveying and viewing the realities of the context from our point of view as youth, so we can shed knowledge on how these affect territories and how in this way the projects that are done should be done with a point of view that is in context and it's accurate, so it can actually have a positive impact on this. Because oftentimes certain projects take place and they have this foreign point of view or point of view of a development that does not favor the context of that we're in. And in that way, many occasions, they cause the loss of the culture and the identity of the people. And also we consider that from the territories, we have our own ways for regaining the ancestral sovereignty. However, this is something that needs to be by acknowledging this wisdom that is held by our ancestors and forefathers and mothers, so we can do a follow-up to that, so they can show themselves in their community beyond the fact that if they know that our grandparents have knowledge, but it is also important that the schools also share that knowledge that is so valuable. And very well, for the next question, that is what mechanisms are necessary to guarantee better production and nutrition for the youth, and the states and FAO can guarantee their spokesmanships and leadership. In our case, the territories, we have a work of initiatives by many youth, but often we don't have the resources, the economic resources, or the organizational resources, because at times the organizations are small and they don't have access to being a legal person or so they can have this economic benefits. So this can be a negative factor, and therefore we also call the international organizations so they can view these small leaderships and that this leadership will have support and they are considered an agent for change. So their actions are also considered as viable actions for the development of their territories, because at the end of the day, those who live in the territory, those who live on the land, know what is the development that we believe and consider is feasible for our own land. So those small projects and those small leaders, at the end of the day, can create great positive effects. So for me, given the regaining of ancestral knowledge, which is also a topic about our identity, and we will mention this quite a lot because we consider that when we preserve the native seeds and the territories and we preserve that culture, there's also an identity as indigenous people. We have a strong identity that can be represented and that can create an environment that is suitable for all of us to continue using this knowledge that at the end of the day have this vision of preserving and having a decent life, but also having a good relationship with Mother Earth that is not a destructive point of view, but caring, growing food, and also having this suitable food. And in this sense, we also talk about public policies. The actual public policies should be uh, adapted to the conditions and context, and not only be public policies that are centralized on cities, that are centralized in contexts where at the end of the day they don't benefit the whole of the population. But these policies should have this vision. Therefore, the public workers should sit down with the leaders of the territories so they can speak face to face. So these visions are built collectively. So they will have this perspective from the indigenous people, from the farming women who are the ones that daily produce, in the case of Guatemala, more than 70% of the production. So our vision is not often in the public policies. At the end of the day, is a sample of this inequality that needs to be overcome. And well, in general, that the participation of the youth and all of the sectors is important for us to create these spaces to say of whether or not we have food sovereignty or not. And that is not just a dream that is there untouched. And this should be the beginning of a process. Thank you very
Gracias a
much.
ti, Madeline.
Thank you, Madeline.
Y gracias a la
And thank
Comisión
you
Nutrición.
for the Better Nutrition
Seguimos con el
group.
grupo de Mejor Medio Ambiente que
We're going to
facilitado por la
continue
CIAFI,
with
que va a presentar Esteban Ramírez.
Better Environment, which will be presented by Sebastián Ramírez.
Muchas gracias, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Bueno, primeramente,
Firstly,
gracias a todo el equipo que estuvo
thank you to the entire
preguntas.
team for the very good feedback that we received. Responding to the first question, which are the areas or priorities that youth can bring into play in agriculture. And we want to be recognized as the work that youth has done for the sustainable transformation of agricultural activities and the sustainable development of this area. From that standpoint, we seek the strengthening of youth involvement in organization and youth or committees, and the creation of new models for more inclusive areas of economy, green development from youth, employment, entrepreneurship, that we strengthen the participation of youth in the cross-cutting aspect of international agreements for public policies such as the Paris Agreement, the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, and the SDGs. Access to land is fundamental for youth to develop sustainable agriculture in the various territories. For the environment, better environment for youth, we find it necessary to have the facilitation of youth in all the levels, including coalitions, organizations, and youth involvement in constitutions. Promote, for example, the environment as we consider as a priority. There were various points that were set forth in the World Food Forum in 2022 and 2023, which there should be mechanisms that provide multi-ethnic vision, considering the different contexts that exist in indigenous peoples, understanding the different challenges that are presented to indigenous youth, and it has to be adapted to the context of each based on public policies. There was a discussion which was centered around decentralization and financing mechanisms and projects that would adapt to the specific aspects of these territories. We talked about ethnicity and the cultural differences when talking about food. We also talked about the specific funds linked to youth, particularly to rural and indigenous youth, with the objective of having agro-food initiative economies. We also talked about self-sustained and self-supply. We also consider that all these projects and funds, in addition to including youth, it should have considered the transformation of agro-food systems that are friendly with the environment. And other comments that we heard, we understood that there's a lack of disaggregated data of youth because governments and the different organizations that work in these various projects of environment and agri-food systems include youth, but it's necessary for them to report the role that we as youth are having vis-a-vis these projects. So we do believe that this should be reflected in indexes so that we are better considered at the moment of implementing these programs. We also think it's important to have communication between the rural communities amongst rural communities. That would be the summary of what we discuss in a better environment. Thank you very much, Esteban, and thank you to the group that discussed this topic of better environment. We'll go with the last group, which is a better life. And the presentation of calculation is the conclusion, sorry, is the representative from Chile, from Apicola. Good afternoon, Camilo. I am Camilo Ruiz. I'm going to see if I can share our presentation. So let me know if you see it appropriately. Yes, we can see it. Perfect. So we developed the topic Better Life. And as previous groups, we developed 2 questions and additional comments. And in general, hearing the previous responses, there are various things that we agree on in that which relates to the reality of youth in the country, in the farming areas, better conditions. And this is very cross-cutting as a subject matter. The first question, which are the areas or priorities of youth in food and agriculture, and how can states, governments, administrations, and FAO take up these priorities in national regional programs? We took note with names, maybe concluding the presentation. Some of you can collaborate and complement what I was able to write down. So the first question, Eduardo said that indigenous youth and original peoples work in storing products. There's a specific way of working with food, and it's important that FAO can collaborate and support the public policies that favor the products that are generated by family farming and indigenous people. These are seasonal foods. There's no homogeneity in a specific product. So to strengthen products that are of family indigenous peoples is relevant to consider. Isabella Meneses indicates that currently there's very little concern about what the citizens at large consume, what we talk about between farmers and producers. It's important that people understand what agriculture means and how these foods that they consume are generated. Ana Valeria Garcia says that migration is massive, particularly during the university years or college years, or when technical training takes place. And from her location, and we all agree mostly, that we have not been able to turn the corner so that youths actually remain in the farms or fields. This is a concern that could help as an input. It's not one thing, it's various elements that complicate the fact that youth does not remain in situ. Camilo Ruiz mentioned that it would be, we believe it's important, which relates to generating different types of national programs or spaces that would encourage dialogue between what was said by Ana, interaction, dialogues between university groups, institutes, FAO, with leading leaders of the youth environment, because the most emblematic aspect of migration between teenage and youth, and when youth enter tertiary education, they are embedded in the place they become, they develop their further education. So new capacities in youth should be developed so that they can find employment and application of their knowledge, so that the massive migration is reduced, and that they can acquire technical and university education. The question number 2 is mechanisms to better guarantee or ensure better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life for you young people. And how can FAO governments ensure leadership? Ana Garcia says that there's a need for youth to be better informed and to participate in various levels of dialogue, receiving of information, developing ideas, to be a part of any of the processes that take place in the different territories and locales. The distribution of information amongst youth so that everyone is included. Eduardo Peralta says that it's important to maintain this intercultural dialogue. Youth should raise their voices in fora, debates, meetings, and consultations that could take place, which has been taking place lately. Not only the voice of youth should also be considered important. FAO could generate the creation or availability of facilitators to strengthen and promote the creation of new leaderships. Isabella Meneses states that it is important to keep times or spaces or moments for youth to meet. Sometimes we discuss, it's a manner of vocabulary, of a specific interests that youth develop, and it is important to maintain. It's very positive to see that youth can debate, discuss, and have the freedom to touch upon topics that they consider of great relevance. And finally, that which relates to the relevance of having the creation of young leaders. It goes beyond technical characteristics, ecology, innovation, how to understand and adapt to this new climate trend. It's important that youth have tools that will promote the creation and generation of leadership that could be pioneers It might not be immediate, it might take some time. Maybe the children of today could be supported by youth groups of today and somehow create a path towards a future in creating the necessary competencies to become leaders and major players in different communities. It is without a doubt that this is very important, how to create leaders and to raise voices and opinions with clarity in that which refers to transmitting youth's interests. And also in the space for other comments, Eduardo set forth the significance of identifying what we understand as a better life. There are so many realities, but we need to understand the commonalities more than the discrepancies, what it means for youth that is linked to the rural world of the native peoples, what better life means. And there's a very good comment in general, youth that is in nature or in farming understands that better life means a community and a group. Not only what income I get, but rather the income that is generated from the environmental, economic, community production, and everything that has been previously mentioned. And just to conclude, we also mentioned the significance of having in-person meetings. This is a trend that is different in different conditions. Sometimes the possibility of a virtual meeting is an alternative, but it should not be lost. The concept of activities that are in person with a high participation. Thank you very much, Camilo. Thank you. Thank all the participants of each group that provided feedback in the improvements, the facilitators, and of this group session. We realize youth are working. They're working in different areas linked to each one of these betters. It is very clear that there is clarity in that which relates to needs, what mechanisms are needed to strengthen their spokesmanship and leadership. I believe this is important to underline. I would also like to mention that all the input will help in the process of consultation for civil society, which will be in person. It is going to be held soon, and also for the declaration that will be presented in the framework of the 38th Regional Conference. Each one of this input is very valuable. It positions the participation of youth and the clarity of the areas of people that work in each area. We're going to open a short moment for Valentina to come back, state based on what was stated. She was in each group participating, taking notes. And now in the plenary, we will hear of each of the four betters, the input of all the information. She's going to write up some final visions and what was shared right now and how it can be worked on. So, Valentina, you're on.
Muchísimas gracias, Laura. Bueno, como dice Laura, yo estuve muy atenta a todos los grupos de trabajo, me estuve paseando entre salas y estoy muy feliz y agradecida de su participación.
Thank you very much, Valentina. Very happy and thankful for your participation. I was going through all the rooms, just listening to your comments that were most interesting. And the summary that was done in the plenary session also reflects very well what you talked about on your respective rooms. Some topics are very much in line with the work of FAO, such as the access to land, that also was very commented on. And other maybes that we don't talk a lot about in FAO, but it's a very important thing that we need to talk about. And I would like to clarify this is what we include in our work, and we are aware that this is something we need to improve in a better way. So, which is what all the groups included here, taking back and rescuing the local and ancestral knowledge, this valuable knowledge coming from the indigenous people, from the first people, family farming, the fields and the territories, and all of this knowledge to be able to combine this with new technologies and innovations without losing it. But also a very important thing that is also part of the centers of the work of the youth has to do the intergenerational dialogue, so we don't lose this knowledge, so we can combine them with the new knowledge that you bring to the farms and the agri-food systems. We also spoke a lot about migration, having initiatives for rooting the youth on the field. Another thing that I thought it was interesting was violence. I believe youth there has a very key role to play in peace and safety in the territories. So this is a line of work that maybe we can promote already, which is how to empower youth and the social network in the territory so we can face the conflicts, achieving peace and safety in these places. Another interesting thing that was commented on here in the plenary as well, that I would love to clarify, is that of FAO we're working along that line, which is something mentioned by several groups, is that the youth participates not only in the activities at the farm, but throughout the chain, such as in the trading, as it was named. It's very important, the work inside and outside of the farm, and also work that is not always associated to agri-food systems, such as, for instance, agritourism, rural tourism, adding value to products in the farm, new ways of trade, digitization, which is something that is very important to continue to work on. And thank you so much for commenting on this and showing that this is of the interest of the youth as well. And lastly, so I don't take up all of your space because the space is for you, I would also like to highlight the value you give to continue to learn, to the exchange of knowledge, to the formative process among peers and youth, but also with experts, adult people, other organizations, other entities in the government and the academia. And that is something that we really value that you acknowledge, so we continue to implement it. Another thing is the statistics. I believe many of you acknowledged this problem we had not only at FAO, but in the institutes of the youth, international bodies, the lack of disaggregated statistics by age group, by ethnicity, sex, etc. So I believe this is key to have these statistics as part of our work to continue generating evidence. This all aims in the same direction, and so you know it's there. It is a challenge that is still pending, and that we are working on for that. We're working on that. So lastly, this need you mentioned of having permanent spaces where youth can contribute to the FAO work and not just the dialogue. I believe this is the dialogue that is the first step of walking in that direction and make a more formal mechanisms that are more permanent where you can participate. And this is something that FAO is working on the UN also with the issue of the Pact for the Future that is going to be discussed at the end of this year at the Summit of the Future. One of the 5 priorities is precisely that, how to include the youth in these necessary changes that we are pursuing globally. And with that, I believe that is work that we commit ourselves to continue strengthening these spaces, expanding the spaces, improving the communication so the youth can participate And yeah, that's it.
también resaltar todo el tema que ustedes hablan
Also
sobre la
highlight everything that
de
you speak, which
ir
is
construyendo políticas públicas
build public
desde la identidad
policies
territorial, incluyendo a
from
la
the territory
juventud,
identity,
y por eso es tan
including the
importante
youth.
seguir fomentando
And
estas
that's
áreas
why it's so
instancias donde
important to continue
ustedes puedan
promoting these type of opportunities where you
expresar sus
can
inquietudes, dar sus
express all of your
recomendaciones
questions,
para que estas
give
políticas y programas que
recommendations,
futuros
so
gobiernos
these
vayan construyendo
policies and
junto con
projects
ellos,
can be built
incorporando
together with you,
ideas que son tan
and you can
necesarias
add your
para,
necessary point of
para una
view
construcción más
so we
igualitaria
can
y equitativa.
have a more
Esto de mi
equitable
parte, yo creo que
construction.
estamos
So that's all
con
from
varias
me.
tareas, pero también
I
con algunas
believe we have a lot of
satisfactorias
work
y
ahead of us,
que
but
vamos
also we
caminando en la misma
are very
dirección,
joyful thinking that
que
we're all
compartimos eso
working
mismo y que sus
on the same
preocupaciones
direction. We have a lot in
nosotros
common. We have a lot of
vamos
common
abarcando y vamos a
concerns,
seguir
and
trabajando
your
juntos.
concerns are also
Muchas
some of
gracias
the
por
work
la
that we're already
oportunidad
doing.
y
Thank you so much for
seguir
the
hacer parte de
space
este diálogo y
and for
esperamos
allowing me
seguir
to be part of the dialogue. And we hope
escuchándonos y viéndonos durante
we
todo el
can
mes.
continue to seeing ourselves during the whole year. Thank you very
Al
much.
contrario, muchas gracias a ti, Valentina, y pues
Quite on the
creo que esa es
contrary.
la idea de
Thank
este
you, Valentina.
espacio, de
And I
seguir
believe this is the idea of this space
colaborando
of continue
haciendo
collaborating,
relaciones con las juventudes y
articulating
pues
between the
reflexionando.
youth and with
Esa es
FAO.
la apuesta y bueno, esa es la mirada.
And this is the bet
Y
and this
bueno,
is the point
también
of view.
es importante lo que sigue
And it's also important what's
es
coming,
escuchar a las propias juventudes. Entonces, para esto
listening the
vamos
youth.
a tener un espacio donde Madre Lucha de Juventud de la Alianza por
So
la
we
Soberanía
have
Alimentaria de los Pueblos de
the
América Latina y el
Alliance
Caribe,
for the Food Sovereignty of the Latin American
compartirles
people or Latin American
conclusiones
and
a
Caribbean.
partir de todo lo
They're
que
going to
hemos
give some final
comentado en el
remarks
material
from everything that
aportado.
was spoken today here
Entonces, te cedo
in
la
the
palabra,
thematic
Madre.
dialogue. So please, Marel.
Gracias, Laurita.
Thank
Bueno,
you, Laurita.
sin duda alguna, este espacio ha
Without a
sido
doubt,
muy
this space
nutritivo
has
para
been
cada una y cada uno
very
y
nourishing for
considero
all
que
of
es
us, and
fundamental
I consider
continuar
it is
fortaleciendo
fundamental
estos
to
espacios
continue
no solo
strengthening these
intergeneracionales, sino
spaces,
también
not only between
interculturales.
generations, but
Estos
also
momentos en los
between
que nos
cultures.
encontramos,
These
personas
moments where we
tanto
are at
indígenas,
now,
campesinas,
indigenous
como no
people,
indígenas, como
farmers,
personas que viven
non-indigenous people, and people who live
en las ciudades y el poder
in the
conectar y el poder
cities,
tener
and be
estos
able to
diálogos que
connect
permiten
and have these
construir
dialogues that allow
mejores
to
y más claras
build
visiones
better
acerca de
and
lo que
clearer
queremos lograr y
visions
cómo
regarding
debemos
what we want to
trabajar
achieve and
es
how we want to work
fundamental.
on
Y
this.
también,
This is
bueno,
fundamental, but
desde mi
also,
perspectiva es
from my point of
esta
view,
forma de ver
this way
con
of
mucha
seeing
alegría el trabajo que
things
se
with a
hace
lot of
uno, pero
joy,
también
the
como
work,
puedan ver que las juventudes ya
as you
están
can see
generando
this.
en
So
los
the
propios
youth is
territorios lo que
already
es
doing from their own
fundamental, porque al
territories,
final si
which is a
nosotras y
fundamental
nosotros
thing because at the end of
paramos
the day,
y
if
no
we
realizamos
stop
acciones
and
desde
we
nuestros
never do
espacios,
actions from
olvídenos.
our
Y el hecho de
spaces,
que
nobody
ejercer
will.
liderazgos
And the fact that
estén
we have
trabajando
that
cada
leadership
día y que
that
están
is
acá
worked on
presentes también para
today
poder dar
and that are
su
present today
visión, para
here
poder
to give you this vision
aportar a estos
and
documentos
to
que estamos
contribute to
elaborando
these
también es
documents
fundamental. Por
that we
ello,
are drafting. This is fundamental. So therefore,
considero que de este
I
espacio, sin
consider
duda
that
alguna,
from
debemos
this
de continuar
space,
fomentando
we should
que
continue
todas estas
promoting
miradas
that
recopiladas
all of
lleguen
these
a donde
points of
tienen
view
que
that have been
llegar
gathered
y que de esa
make it to
forma
where they should
también
go to, and
podamos
in
continuar
that way as well,
en
we can
alianza para lo que
continue
tenga que venir,
in an
porque al
alliance to what
final
needs to come.
los sucesos
Because at the end
que
of the
se
day,
pasan en un territorio muchas veces
these
son
things that happen
similares
in
a
a
los que
territory,
pasan en
many
otros
times
territorios, ya sea
these
que
things
sea
are
en
similar to what
otros
happens in other
países,
lands,
y también el
be that in
poder
different
encontrarnos y darnos
countries,
cuenta de que
or
no
maybe meeting
necesariamente
ourselves and realizing that necessarily
la
this
vía más fácil
exit
para todas
or the
las
most feasible
problemáticas
way
es la
out for all of
misma,
these
pero sin
problems
duda alguna
is the
podemos ser un
same. But without a doubt, we can
desde
be a
nuestra visión
contribution
para poder
from our vision to
amplificar esa visión, ¿no? De que al
to
final
expand this
todas
vision.
y
So at the end of
todos
the day,
queremos que
everyone
exista ese
want
bienestar,
there to
esa
be this
soberanía
well-being, this sovereignty
de poder
of
tener territorios fuertes en donde también
having
podamos
strong
tener
territories
ese
where we can
acceso y ese
also
derecho
have
a
this
una
access
alimentación
and this
sana.
right
Y es por eso
to
que esta
healthy food.
preocupación,
And that is
porque
why our concern is
pensamos
that.
que
Because we
ahora
also
como
thought
jóvenes
that
estamos
now,
viviendo
as
todas
the youth, where
estas
we're living
situaciones de cambio
all
climático,
of
es
the
fuerte.
situations of
Y
climate change, is a
pensar en
strong
cómo va a
thing.
ser de aquí a
And
unos
thinking
años
about how
es
is it going to be
mucho más
from now to
fuerte.
a couple of
Y
years,
sabemos que conforme
it's
vamos
going to get
avanzando,
worse because
también
as
las
we progress,
problemáticas van avanzando y se
also
van
the
cruzando nuestros
problems
caminos, pero que
get more profound and across our way. But without a doubt, if we are willing to continue acting from our spaces and also continuing strengthening this policy from our countries, because I consider that the policy of our countries should contain that vision from us. We should be able to continue fighting because those visions should be acknowledged, because what we are talking about here now should also be heard there with the workers who are making decisions for our country. Because at the end of the day, they are making decisions on behalf of the whole population. And the fact that is that we just leave the decision makers make the decisions, it's just huge, because we also condemn ourselves when we allow them to do that. And if we have in our hands the opportunity of changing, as little as that opportunity is, we need to raise our voices and be there and being present and be able to add to these dialogues is a fundamental thing. And that is why I invite you to continue as youth, raising our voices, raising this mood, so our voices can be heard everywhere. And also, the voices of the least represented youth should also be heard, both the voices of the Afro-descendant youth, indigenous youth, farming youth, without distinction. Because at the end of the day, if we work together, we can get very positive outcomes. So thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.
Muchas gracias, Madeli.
Thank you
Bueno,
very much,
pues
Madeli.
antes ya estamos
Well,
como casi en la parte final
we
de este
are at
diálogo
the
temático de
final part
juventudes,
of this dialogue of the
pero
youth,
antes de
and
ir al cierre,
but before
les pido
closing,
amablemente a cada una
I will kindly
de las
ask
personas participantes
everyone
aquí
who is participating
si
here
pueden encender sus cámaras
if
para
you
que
can
tomemos
please switch on your cameras
la
so
toma
we
de una
can
fotografía
take
grupal
the picture, the
y
group
bueno,
picture,
que se pueda visibilizar que
so we
quienes
can
estuvieron
see
presentes.
who
Sé que
was
a veces en
here
estos
present.
espacios pues
I
nos
know that
cuesta un
here in these
poco
places
la
sometimes it's very
participación
hard.
individual, pero pues es importante
It's very hard to have an individual
que se
presentation,
quede el registro.
but it's very important to have this registry.
Entonces estamos dando unos segundos.
So we'll give you a couple of
si se les facilita
seconds.
encender sus cámaras.
If you can please switch on your cameras.
Y aquí, bueno, el equipo de FAO amablemente va a hacer
And here the FAO group
toma de las
team
fotografías.
will take the picture.
Bueno, me avisas, Marcela, si ya quedó.
Un segundo, un
Let me know,
segundo.
Marcela, if it's done. One more second. One more second, please. There we go.
Denme un momento.
Just give me one moment.
Listo, gracias.
All good, thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Pues
Well,
agradecer a cada una de
we would like to thank
los participantes que estuvieron el
everyone
día
who
de hoy.
participated
Nada más,
today.
voy a dar por
And
último
without any further
unas
ado,
palabras de cierre.
I would like to make some
Una
closing
reflexión
remarks and
general.
a
Bueno, pues
conclusion.
en este ideal, ¿no? que se
So
tiene
in
presente a
this
propósito,
idea,
pues de caminar hacia sistemas agroalimentarios más eficientes, más
We
inclusivos,
want to have more inclusive and resilient
a lograr
with a
una mejor
view to
producción,
attaining a better production, a better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life. We need precisely to guarantee the voices and the participation that is effective for youth. I would like to thank, from that standpoint, to each and every person, women, and diverse youth that participated in these two topic-related events, one about gender and this one about youth. I would like to remind you that these topic-related meetings provide us with feedback and also provide us with the kickoff of the framework of the 38th ALARC meeting. So I would like to thank each and every one of your comments and involvement. I would like to thank those that were participating in the thematic topics through YouTube. I would like to also comment that from the new thematic topics, these will be processed. All the input will be socialized through your emails, those that you have provided at the moment of registration. And also, I would like to say that this is a baseline for the process of consultation for the civil society. Remember that consultation in civil society was being reminded that this is a hybrid event, which is in person and remote. And I would like to invite all of you to participate in this consultation of civil society, which is 28 and 29 of February. On the chat, they will provide you with a link and will be transmitted through the FAO Americas channels. I would also like to mention that to carry out this activity, this is a work and articulation which is joined on the sovereignty of Latin America and the Caribbean nations. We are a network of various organizations, in fact, networks that are participating within the alliance. And this is activities of thematic event, which was done with the coordination of FAO. These consultation and participation is and joint work is part of the institutions, and coalitions is much easier to achieve. I wanted to say this. I would like to thank everyone at FAO for this. This is not over. This is just the kickoff, the starting point. Please continue with the consultation of the civil society, which I invite you all to participate. We will send you a link of the regional FAO conference, which will be held in Guyana, so that you, the launch, the announcement of this conference has just been announced, so you can review it and you can do a follow-up and how we are involved in participating. And lastly, I would like to state that in achieving the food sovereignty in communities and peoples, this is a struggle, and there's a great deal to be done still. But it is fundamental that all the areas, women, youth, children, in fact, and the community as a whole, become involved and continue in this struggle. And we have to recognize the diversity which is involved in agri-food systems, the farmers, the people in rural people, indigenous people, small-scale fishermen and fishing villages and areas. We are all in the same objective to find food sovereignty for everyone. Without further ado, we will conclude. Thank you very much for your participation and thank you for following this transmission, and we will see you soon.